The path stretches ahead as a faint ribbon of lighter darkness, just visible because the stars overhead cast a gentle, undirected glow, enough to separate the line of the earth from the shape of the courtyard fence. On either side, low shrubs and the suggestion of maple trees stand motionless, their leaves hushed by the late autumn chill. The air carries a clean, cold edge that you feel on the skin of your face and the back of your hands. It holds the sense of dry grass, old cedarwood from the buildings, and the faintest trace of charcoal from yesterday's cooking fires, now long extinguished. With each step, the bucket in your hand shifts slightly, the water inside it drawn from the well the previous evening, sloshing a muted, rhythmic note against the wooden staves, a sound so low it merges with the rustle of your clothing and the soft scuff of your sandals. The stable building lies at the far end of the compound, beyond the small training yard and the storehouse, and as you round the corner of the equipment shed, its silhouette rises against the tree line. It is a long, low structure, its thatched roof sweeping down in a dark curve that blots out a strip of stars, so that the building appears less like a separate thing and more like a quiet extension of the forest itself. No lantern burns inside, no sliver of light escapes through the gaps in the plank walls, and for a moment the stable seems utterly still, a sleeping creature holding its breath. Your own footsteps, unhurried and even, carry you across the remaining ground, and the rope handle repeats its tiny creak, each sound as much a part of the night as the distant single call of a nightjar echoing from the hillside trees. When you reach the stable door, a heavy sliding panel of dark cedar fitted into a grooved track, you pause and shift the bucket to your other hand. The wood is cold under your palm, textured with fine grain and the occasional small knot, and you push sideways with a steady, gentle pressure that makes the door move without a groan, as if it too has learned to be silent in these hours. You open it just wide enough to slip through, a gap barely the width of your shoulders, and slide it closed again behind you, leaving the outside world to its stars and its cold. The interior darkness is deeper and softer, the kind of darkness that seems to absorb sound as much as light, and immediately the scent of the stable wraps around you, a warm, layered smell of hay, dry straw, horsehide, and old timber, all blended with the faint, sharp tang of cleanings done the day before. The horses shift in their stalls as you step inside, and you hear the soft stamp of a hoof against packed earth, the slow exhale of a large animal, the rustle of a tail against a wooden partition. None of the sounds are sudden or startled. They are the easy half-waking movements of creatures who know this footfall and this hour by heart. You stand still just inside the door, letting your eyes adjust to the deeper dark, and you feel the stable's quiet presence settle around you like a second layer of night. The building has 8 stalls, 4 along each side of a central aisle, and each one holds a horse bred for the clan's mounted warriors, their size and strength hinted at by the darkness that shifts and breathes within the enclosures. The air inside is noticeably warmer than outside, held close by the thatch and the body heat of the animals, and you feel the chill begin to lift from your hands and the back of your neck. The bucket handle has stopped its creaking now, and you lower the vessel carefully to the earth floor, placing it beside the stone shelf near the door where the grooming tools are kept. Straightening, you let your gaze wander through the darkness, not searching for anything, simply allowing the shape of the stable to reveal itself slowly. The crossbeams overhead are barely visible as faint horizontal lines against the higher dark, and the wooden pillars that support them stand like patient, silent watchers at the corners of the stalls. There is no hurry in you at all. You could stand here for a long while without moving, and it would be the same as any other task, just another part of the morning's slow unfolding. The soft breathing of the horses, 8 separate rhythms, fills the space with a calm so steady that your own breath begins to deepen in answer. A little distance to your left, the nearest stall holds a dark bay gelding, and you can just make out the shape of his head, the way it hangs low in repose, one hind leg cocked slightly so the hoof rests only at the toe. His ears turn toward you, capturing the faint rustle of your clothing, then swivel lazily forward again, unconcerned. To his right, a grey mare stands with her back to the partition, her pale coat catching the slightest hint of starlight that finds its way through a high, small window set into the rear wall, and she appears as a ghostly silver outline within the shadows. Further along, the chestnut gelding is little more than a block of deeper darkness, his breath a low, regular huff that you can count if you wish. And across the aisle, the other 5 horses are black, a light bay, another chestnut, a roan, and an older black with a grey sprinkled muzzle. Each occupy their own pocket of quiet, their presence as solid and real as the ground beneath you. You remain motionless, listening to these sounds of resting animals, and you notice that each horse breathes with its own particular rhythm, so that the stable becomes a kind of breathing architecture, its very timbers seeming to expand and contract with the slow tide of air. One exhale comes as a long, gentle blow through wide nostrils, another as a shorter, softer puff that stirs the straw bedding. A third horse sighs, a deep, almost human sound of contentment, and a fourth simply stands in absolute silence, as if holding the stillness within its own body. The sounds overlap and separate, a quiet tapestry that never repeats itself exactly, and you feel your own thoughts thin out, becoming as diffuse and unimportant as the motes of dust suspended in the dark air. Gradually your eyes have gathered what little light there is, and you can now discern the partitions between the stalls, the lines of the feed troughs, and the faint gleam of a brass fitting on a halter hung from a peg. The high window, no more than a narrow rectangle cut into the wooden wall, holds a patch of deep indigo sky with a single star visible in its upper corner, a star that seems to pulse faintly as the atmosphere shifts high above. The stable floor is packed earth, covered with a layer of fresh straw that rustles softly under the horses' occasional weight shifts, and the scent of that straw, dry and sweet, mingles with the warmer, muskier smell of horse, creating an atmosphere that is entirely its own, separate from the cold world outside. Your body settles into stillness, the gentle ache of having walked from your bed now fading, replaced by a quiet alertness that requires no action. You feel the texture of the air against your skin, the slight brush of a cobweb near the door that you had not noticed when you entered, and the minute cool draught that snakes along the floor from the gap beneath the door, carrying a faint whisper of the outside chill. In the stall just opposite, the roan horse shakes his head once, the sound a soft flapping of ears and a jingle of the halter ring, then returns to immobility, his long face becoming still as carved wood. You watch the outline of his neck, and the way his mane falls in a dark rope along his crest, seeing it as one more shape among many, a shape that will soon become familiar under your hands, once the lantern is lit and the grooming begins. But for now, the lantern remains unlit, and the darkness holds you in a pause that has no beginning and no end, just a deep, wordless moment of waiting. You let your attention drift to the sounds beyond the stable walls, the far-off call of a fox, so distant it might be a memory of a sound, the whisper of wind in the topmost branches of the cedars at the edge of the forest, and once a single drop of condensed moisture that falls from the thatch onto the ground outside with a tiny soft pat. Each sound comes, registers, and dissolves, leaving behind an even greater silence. The horses do not react to these noises. They remain in their slow sleeping rhythms, their large bodies resting with the absolute trust of animals who know this place and its routines. You are aware that the bucket of water stands beside you, its wooden sides beaded with the slight sweat of the cool liquid within, and you know that eventually you will light the lantern, take up the currycomb and the soft brush, and begin the slow work of tending each horse in turn. But that is not yet, and the thought of it does not pull at you, does not demand that you move or plan. Instead, you let the moments stretch, feeling the way your own heartbeat has slowed to match the tempo of the stable, a steady, unhurried pulse that seems to resonate with the breathing of the 8 horses around you. The journey from your pallet to this spot, though short in distance, has become a transition from one realm to another, and now you stand at the threshold of the day's quiet labor, entirely at ease. The star in the high window has shifted slightly, though whether from the earth's turning or your own changed angle, you cannot tell and do not need to know. It simply is there, a pinprick of cool light in the indigo square. The stable air, now fully familiar to your senses, feels less like a space enclosed by walls and more like a held breath, a gentle container for the warmth and life of the horses. The dust particles that hang in the air catch no light yet, but you can almost sense their slow drift, a lazy, suspended motion that will become visible only when the lantern flame rises and sets them aglow. In the farthest stall, the older black horse with the grey muzzle stretches his neck forward and blows a long, fluttering breath through his nostrils, a sound like a soft rumble of contentment, and then draws his head back, settling his weight more fully onto 3 legs. The straw beneath him rustles briefly, then goes still. The straw beneath him rustles briefly, then goes still. You notice that your own shoulders, which had been slightly raised against the cold when you first stepped outside, have dropped and loosened, and your hands hang easy at your sides. The grip of the bucket handle has left a faint impression on your palm, a small reminder of the short walk that now feels like something that happened long ago. The quiet inside the stable is not empty. It is filled with the presence of the horses, with the scent of hay and timber, with the memory of countless other mornings exactly like this one. And in that fullness you find a deep, calm certainty that the next hours will unroll, as they always do, step by slow step, with no surprises and no demands beyond the simple, repetitive care of these animals. The thought is not a thought so much as a feeling, a gentle current beneath the surface of your mind, as the darkness continues to hold its soft, unbroken vigil around you, and the 8 horses breathe in and out, like the turning of a great invisible wheel. You stand there for a time that cannot be measured, perhaps only a few minutes, perhaps much longer, until the cold that had clung to your clothing fades entirely, replaced by the stable's quiet warmth. The night outside remains unchanged, the stars still thick, the air still sharp, but inside this wooden sanctuary, the world has narrowed to the simple fact of your own steady presence and the soft lives of the horses. And so you wait, without hurry and without weariness, as the first chapter of the morning writes itself in the darkness, wordless and slow. The darkness remains around you like a held breath, but now a small intention forms, quiet and unhurried, that it is time to bring light into the stable. You turn toward the door where the stone shelf waits, a flat slab of grey rock set into the wooden wall at the height of your chest. Its surface cool and faintly gritty even from a distance. Your sandals make a soft whisper against the packed earth as you cross the few steps, the sound blending with the steady breathing of the horses and the rustle of straw. The stone shelf has been in this spot longer than anyone remembers. A simple, solid thing, and tonight it holds the oil lantern, the flint, and the iron striker, all placed exactly where you left them the morning before. Your hands reach out in the dark and find the familiar shapes by touch, the way you might recognize a well-known face without needing to see it. The lantern is a small brass vessel with a glass chimney, cool against your fingertips, and you lift it carefully, feeling the slight weight of the oil still sloshing inside. You set it down on the center of the stone shelf, positioning it so it will be steady, and then your right hand closes around the flint, a piece of dark, glassy stone with a sharp edge, while your left finds the iron striker, a curved bar that fits neatly into your palm, its surface worn smooth by countless strikes. The flint and the striker are old companions. The iron has a faint patina of rust along the sides that never touches the striking surface, and the flint holds tiny glints of embedded crystal that you can feel as a minute roughness. You bring them together just above the lantern's wick, holding the flint at an angle you have learned by heart, and you scrape the iron down its edge. A small shower of sparks jumps into the darkness, orange, white, and fleeting, and they scatter against the wick without catching. You strike again, a second scrape that produces another cascade of tiny bright specks, and this time one of them lands on the oil-soaked cotton and holds, a tiny orange ember that glows for a heartbeat before a small flame leaps up, no larger than a bean. The flame wobbles, a thin tongue of yellow, and you cup your hand around it instinctively, shielding it from the faint draught that moves through the stable. It steadies, growing slightly, and the glass chimney begins to warm under your palm as you withdraw your hand. The light pushes outward in a small warm circle, just enough to see your own hands and the immediate surface of the stone shelf. You adjust the lantern's wick by turning the small brass knob at the side, watching the flame respond with a taller, calmer glow that settles into a steady teardrop shape. The yellow light deepens into a soft gold, and the circle of illumination expands, reaching now to the nearest stall partition, the edge of the feed trough, and the wooden chest that sits on the floor beneath the shelf. The smell of burning oil fills the air with a faint, pleasant smokiness that mingles with the hay and horse scents, and the lantern begins its quiet, barely audible hiss, a sound so constant and gentle that it becomes part of the silence itself. You reach up and take the lantern's wire handle, lifting it carefully to the hook that hangs from a crossbeam overhead, and you settle it there, where it will cast light across the center aisle without swinging or tilting. With the lantern secure, you step back slightly and look around. The glow now reveals the stable in soft layers, pushing the deepest shadows into the corners and under the eaves, while bringing the nearer surfaces into a warm amber clarity. The crossbeams overhead are rough-hewn cedar, their grain lines running in long, wavy patterns, and small knots in the wood catch the light as dark whirls. The row of stall doors stands to your left and right, each one a rectangular frame of vertical planks with a simple wooden latch, and you can see the heads of the horses, now dark bay, grey, chestnut each, looking toward the lantern with calm, sleepy eyes that reflect twin pinpoints of flame. The packed earth floor is covered with a fresh layer of straw, pale gold in the light, and it rustles softly under the horses' weight as they shift. The stone shelf, now fully lit, shows its surface worn to a smooth concavity in the center from long use, and beside it your wooden water bucket sits where you left it, its rope handle coiled, the water inside dark and still. You bend down to the wooden chest that rests on the floor just beneath the stone shelf. It is a simple box made of suji wood, its lid held by two iron hinges that creak faintly as you lift it, a sound that the horses have heard so many times they do not even flick an ear. The inside of the chest smells of dry wood and a faint trace of linseed oil from the tools, and it holds the grooming implements arranged in the order you always keep them. You reach in and lift out the first object, a currycomb made of iron, shaped like a flat oval with a handle that fits into a wooden grip. The teeth are short and closely set, each one a tiny, blunt point, and they feel cool and slightly rough against your palm as you turn the comb over. The iron has a dark grey color, mottled with the fine scratches of use, and the wooden handle is polished to a soft sheen from the oils of your hand. You place the currycomb on the stone shelf beside the lantern, where it will wait. Next, you take out the two brushes. The first is a stiff-bristled brush with a long handle of plain wood. The bristles, made from boar hair, dense and firm, their tips ever so slightly flagged from many hours of sweeping across horsehide. You run your thumb across the bristle ends, feeling the springy resistance, and you note the way the wooden handle has a small indentation on one side where your fingers naturally curl, a hollow worn by repetition. The second brush is softer, its bristles finer and longer, made perhaps from horsehair itself, and it is lighter in the hand. This one will be used after the currycomb and the stiff brush, to flick away the last particles of dust and bring a gentle shine to the coat. You set both brushes on the stone shelf alongside the currycomb, their wooden handles parallel to one another, the bristles facing upward like a row of dark, neat grass. From the bottom of the chest, you lift a soft cloth, a square of undyed cotton that has been folded many times into a thick pad. The cloth is slightly rough from washing, but its surface is clean and free of oil or dirt, and when you unfold it, it releases the faint scent of the cedarwood chest it sleeps in. You fold it again, more loosely this time, and lay it over the brushes, where it will be ready for the final polishing of each horse's coat. Finally, you close the chest and straighten up, your gaze moving to the water bucket that stands beside the shelf. The water inside is the same water you drew from the well last evening, and it has settled overnight so that any cloudiness has sunk to the bottom, leaving a clear, cool liquid that faintly reflects the lantern flame as a broken gold line. You will use this water sparingly, dipping the soft cloth into it when a horse's face or muzzle needs a gentle wipe, so the bucket remains where it is, a silent, patient vessel. Now all the tools are gathered. The stone shelf holds them in a neat line, the iron currycomb, the stiff brush, the soft brush, the folded cloth. The lantern above them pours its steady light downward, and each tool casts a small shadow that stretches toward the back of the shelf. You stand still for a moment, feeling the familiar weight of the ritual settling over you like a well-worn garment. This is the same arrangement you have made on so many mornings, the same silent inventory of things needed, the same quiet readiness. The horses, perhaps sensing that the grooming will soon begin, shift in their stalls with a soft collective murmur of movement. A hoof stamps gently, a tail swishes against a wooden post, a deep breath is exhaled in a long, slow sigh. The grey mare turns her head to look directly at the lantern, and the light catches the silvery dapple of her coat, making it glow faintly. The stone shelf itself is a thing you know intimately, its surface marked by tiny chips and scratches that tell the story of dropped curry combs and the scrape of iron tools, and there is a darker stain near the back where lantern oil once spilled long ago, now just a shadow that never fades. The shelf feels cool under your fingers as you brush away a few stray bits of straw that have landed there, and you notice the way the lantern flame sways ever so slightly with the air currents, causing the shadows to pulse in a slow, hypnotic rhythm. Outside, beyond the stable walls, the world remains dark and still, the stars holding their positions, the night air sharp and cold, but inside this circle of light, everything is warm and contained and waiting. You pick up the curry comb and hold it in your right hand, testing its balance, then set it down again, not yet ready to begin. The ritual of preparation is its own small chapter, a pause between the darkness of arrival and the steady, repetitive motion of grooming. There is no need to rush, the horses are not impatient, and the sun will not rise for a long while yet. So you allow yourself to look around the stable once more, now fully visible under the lantern's golden arc. The wooden pillars are thick and square, set deep into the earth, and the grain of each one runs vertically, like the lines of a weathered face. Cobwebs hang in the highest corners, fine silver threads that the lantern makes into delicate lace, and they tremble slightly in the draught from the door. The feed troughs at the front of each stall are half filled with last evening's hay, the dried grasses still faintly green in the low light. The horses' water trough, a long stone basin at the far end of the aisle, gleams dully with the water you refreshed last night, and you can hear the occasional drip of a small leak from the roof that lands in the straw, a sound so regular it might be a slow clock. Your body feels loose and easy, the slight chill from your walk now entirely gone, replaced by a comfortable warmth that comes from standing near the animals and the lantern's small heat. The smells of the stable have deepened in the light, the hay becoming sweeter, the horse scent muskier, the oil from the lantern adding its own note, and you breathe them in without thinking, as natural as the air itself. Your hands, resting on the edge of the stone shelf, are calm and still, the fingers slightly curved, the knuckles relaxed. You are aware of the time stretching ahead of you, an open, unhurried expanse that will be filled with the soft sounds of brushing and the quiet presence of the horses. And the awareness is a gentle one, carrying no weight. After a long moment, you decide to check the lantern's oil level, just as you always do before starting the work. You lift the lantern from its hook carefully, the wire handle warm now, and tilt it slightly to see the oil reservoir through the translucent base. The oil is more than halfway full, a dark amber liquid that moves sluggishly as you tilt, and you know it will last well past dawn. Satisfied, you hang the lantern again and notice how the flame settles back into its perfect teardrop shape, the tip just barely smoking, a thin wisp that vanishes almost before it forms. The glass chimney is warm to the touch but not too hot, and a faint bloom of condensation has appeared on its lower edge, a delicate mist that catches the light. You turn your attention back to the tools on the stone shelf, and you realize that there is one more thing to do. Before you approach the first stall, you will need a small amount of water, ready for dipping the cloth later. So you take a small tin cup that hangs from a nail near the shelf and dip it into your wooden bucket, filling it with clear water. You set the cup beside the folded cloth, where it will be within easy reach. The cup has a simple loop handle, and it holds just enough water for a single horse's face wipe, meaning you will refill it as needed from the main bucket throughout the morning. The sound of the water filling the cup is a bright, liquid note, a small chime in the quiet, and then it is done. Everything is ready. The currycomb and brushes lie on the stone shelf in their established order, the cloth folded beside them, the cup of water waiting. The lantern burns steadily above, its glow warm and constant, and the horses stand in their stalls like great, patient shadows given form. Your breathing is deep and even, matching the slow pulse of the stable, and you feel a quiet readiness that is not quite anticipation, more a simple recognition that the next part of the morning is about to unfold. You pick up the currycomb again, this time with the intention of keeping it in your hand, and you turn toward the first stall where the dark bay gelding waits, his large liquid eye reflecting the lantern flame as he watches you. The moment stretches, and the stable holds its gentle silence, a sanctuary of calm at the dark edge of the world. The currycomb rests in your right hand, its iron teeth cool against your palm, and the weight of it is a familiar anchor as you turn away from the stone shelf and face the first stall. The lantern light reaches down the aisle in a soft golden corridor, leaving the far end in shadow, and it catches the edges of the stall partitions, the grain of the wood, the stray bits of straw that cling to the earth floor. Your sandals make a quiet, rhythmic scuff as you take the few steps toward the dark bay gelding, a sound that seems to belong entirely to this hour, unhurried and small. The horse stands with his head still lowered, one hind hoof resting at its toe, but as you approach, his ears shift forward, cupping toward the sound of your movement, and a low, soft nicker rumbles in his throat, a greeting more felt than heard. You stop just outside his stall door, a sliding panel of vertical planks fitted into a wooden track, and you place your free hand flat against the top edge. The wood is smooth and cool, and through it you can sense the warmth of the horse beyond, the subtle heat of his large body radiating outward. The gelding turns his head slightly, bringing one dark liquid eye to bear on you, and the lantern flame reflects in it as a tiny steady spark, giving his gaze a depth that seems calm and ancient. He does not shift his weight or show any sign of restlessness. He simply watches you with the patience of an animal who has stood in this stall through countless mornings and knows exactly what comes next. You let the moment hold, your own breathing slow and deep, the two of you separated by only a few inches of wood and the quiet air. After a pause, you slide the stall door sideways with both hands, one still holding the currycomb, the other guiding the door's edge. The door moves easily in its track, a soft wooden rumble that blends with the lantern's hiss, and you open it just wide enough to step through, leaving a gap that will not crowd the horse or make him feel confined. The gelding shifts his weight now, a slow, deliberate movement that transfers his mass from 3 legs to 4, and his hooves make a soft, muffled thud against the packed straw, a sound that seems to settle rather than disturb. You step inside the stall, and the space closes around you gently, the wooden walls rising on three sides, the ceiling low enough that you could touch the crossbeam with an upraised hand. The air in here is warmer still, holding the horse's body heat and the sweet grassy scent of the hay in his feeder. You stand still just inside the door, and the gelding turns his head toward you fully now, his muzzle coming close enough that you feel the faint warm puff of his breath against your sleeve. It is a gentle, rhythmic exhale that smells of dried grass and clean horse, and it moves the fabric of your sleeve in tiny, invisible ripples. You reach up with your left hand, the one not holding the currycomb, and place it flat on his shoulder, feeling the short, sleek hair and the solid muscle beneath. The coat is warm, almost hot, and you can feel the slow rise and fall of his breathing under your palm, a deep, steady rhythm that seems to travel up through your arm and into your own chest. For a long while you simply stand there, your hand resting on his shoulder, the currycomb held loosely at your side, and you let the quiet of the stall wrap around both of you like a blanket. The gelding's ear nearest to you swivels back, catching the tiny sounds of your presence, the rustle of your clothing, the faint creak of your sandal strap as you adjust your stance, and then it relaxes, drooping sideways in a sign of ease. His lower lip, dark and soft, hangs slightly loose, and you notice the way his whiskers catch the lantern light, each one a fine, pale filament against the darker muzzle. The horse's eye blinks slowly, the lid rising and falling with a deliberate, almost drowsy motion, and you see the delicate network of veins in the pink inner corner, the long lashes that curve outward like tiny brushes. There is no impatience in him, no stamping or shifting. He is as content to stand here with you as you are to stand with him, and the two of you exist in a pocket of time that seems separate from everything beyond the stable walls. Your left hand begins to move, not with any purpose yet, just a slow, flat palm stroke that runs from the point of his shoulder up toward the base of his neck. The hair is smooth and lies flat in the direction of your stroke, and you feel the small ridge of muscle that runs along his crest, the subtle contour of his anatomy beneath the skin. The horse responds by leaning ever so slightly into the pressure, a minute shift of his weight that brings his shoulder a fraction closer to your hand, as if to say that the touch is welcome. The warmth of his coat seeps into your palm, and you notice that your own breathing has fallen into sync with his, the same deep, unhurried tempo, as though the boundary between your body and the horse's body has become a little less distinct. The stall itself is a small world, its walls marked with the tiny scuffs and scratches of long use, and the straw underfoot is clean and springy, smelling of the field it came from. The feeder in the corner holds a few remaining strands of hay, their green-yellow stalks catching the lantern light, and you can hear the soft, occasional crunch as the gelding idly mouths a piece, his jaw moving in a slow, circular grind that is as rhythmic as the rest of him. Outside the stall, the rest of the stable continues its quiet existence. The grey mare shifts her weight in the next stall, a soft rustle of straw, and the chestnut gelding further down exhales a long, low sigh that seems to echo in the timber. None of these sounds intrude. They simply fill the background with a gentle murmur, like the distant memory of a stream. You lower your currycomb to the straw at your feet, setting it down carefully so it will not be in the way, and you bring your now free right hand up to join the left on the horse's shoulder. Both palms rest against the warm, dark coat, and you stand there with your hands side by side, feeling the great animal breathe under your touch. The gelding's head dips slightly, his muzzle coming to rest near your elbow, and he exhales a long, warm breath that flows down your forearm, carrying with it the faintest tickle of moisture. You do not speak, because there is no need for words. The horse understands your presence, and you understand his, and the silence between you is full rather than empty. The lantern continues its soft hiss overhead, and the high window shows the same square of deep indigo sky, unchanged, as if the night has paused in its turning. After a while, you begin to notice the small details of the horse's coat, the things you will need to be mindful of once the grooming starts. There is a faint patch of rougher hair just behind his left elbow where the saddle girth rests, and a tiny scar, old and white, that runs in a thin line across his ribs, a mark from some long ago scratch that healed clean. The mane that falls along his neck is thick and black, slightly tangled in a few places, and you see a small piece of straw caught in the longer hairs near the withers, a bright gold strand against the dark. His tail hangs straight and full, the coarse hairs swishing once lazily to dislodge a phantom fly, then settling back against his hocks. All these things you file away without conscious effort, just as you have done on so many mornings, building a quiet catalogue of the horse's condition. Your hands continue their slow, still movement, shifting from his shoulder up to the side of his neck, following the curve of his throat, where the large veins run close under the skin. You can feel his pulse there, a steady, strong beat that is slower than your own, a deep primal rhythm that speaks of his size and his calm. The gelding turns his head just enough to nudge your sleeve at his muzzle, a gentle exploratory gesture, and his whiskers tickle the fabric as he snuffles softly, perhaps catching the scent of the oil on your hands from the lantern or the faint trace of the wooden chest. You let him investigate, standing still as he breathes in and out, his nostrils flaring slightly, and then he lifts his head again, satisfied, returning to his patient waiting. The quiet inside the stall feels almost tangible, a substance you could touch, and it wraps around the two of you in layers of warmth and shadow. You can hear the creak of the stable timbers settling, a sound so faint it might be your imagination, and the distant, barely audible call of a second nightjar from the hillside, a single clear note that hangs in the air and then fades. The gelding's ears flick once in that direction, then return to their relaxed sideways droop. You are aware of the passage of time only as a slow, gentle current, a flow that carries you without urgency toward the moment when you will pick up the currycomb again and begin the actual brushing, but that moment is not yet here, and you do not reach for it. Instead, you step a little closer to the horse so that your shoulder nearly touches his, and you bring your left hand up to the base of his mane, where the dark hair springs thick and coarse from the crest of his neck. You run your fingers through it, gently separating the strands, working out the small piece of straw you noticed earlier, and letting it fall to the floor. The mane is slightly oily to the touch, a natural protection against weather, and it leaves a faint residue on your fingertips, a scent that is clean and slightly musky. The gelding seems to enjoy the attention, lowering his head a fraction more and half closing his eyes, his long lashes resting against his cheek. You can see the delicate skin around his eye, the tiny wrinkles that deepen when he blinks, the soft, velvety texture of his muzzle just inches away. You spend a long time like this, doing nothing more than touching the horse, learning again the landscape of his body through your hands. Your right palm traces the curve of his ribs, feeling each one as a gentle ridge beneath the smooth hide, and you note the way the coat is slightly thicker here, a winter coat beginning to grow in anticipation of colder days. You move slowly around to his other side, careful not to startle him, and you continue the same quiet, flat-palmed stroking along his opposite shoulder and flank. The horse accepts this with the same calm, turning his head to watch you for a moment before facing forward again, his weight shifting just enough to let you move freely. The straw crunches softly under your sandals, and the lantern light follows you through the gaps in the partition, casting your moving shadow onto the far wall of the stall. When you return to his left side, you stand still once more, facing his shoulder, and you notice that your own mind has become very quiet. There are no thoughts of the day ahead, no memories of yesterday, just the simple, present fact of the horse's warmth and the rhythm of his breathing. This is a gift of the early morning, this emptying out of everything unnecessary, and you accept it without analysis, as naturally as breathing. The gelding, perhaps sensing the depth of the quiet, lets out another long, slow sigh, his whole body seeming to settle even further, so that his presence becomes less like a standing animal and more like a mountain at rest. The lantern flame, still burning steadily on its hook outside in the aisle, paints the edges of the stall door with a golden line, and you can see the tiny motes of dust that float in its beam, drifting lazily upward and downward in invisible currents. A small moth has found its way inside, drawn by the light, and it flutters around the glass chimney in a soft, erratic dance, its wings a pale blur. The horse pays it no mind, and you watch it for a few moments, seeing the way its shadow is cast hugely onto the stable wall, a ghostly shape that flickers and shifts. Then it settles on the wooden beam above the stall, folding its wings and becoming just another dark speck. Your hands have come to rest on the gelding's shoulder again, and you feel the faint tremor of a muscle twitch under the skin, a tiny involuntary movement that is as unremarkable as a blink. The horse's coat, where the lantern light falls directly on it, reveals a deep, rich brown that is almost black, with a subtle reddish undertone that glows in the warmth of the flame. The hair is short and lies in a uniform direction, smooth as polished wood, and you know that when the currycomb moves across it, it will make a soft, shushing sound that will blend with the other noises of the stable. But that is for later, and you do not reach for the comb yet. Instead, you close your eyes, just briefly, and let the sensations wash over you without the distraction of sight. The warmth of the horse against your palms, the sound of his breathing, the smell of hay and leather and oil, the solid feel of the earth under your feet, all of it combines into a single, peaceful chord. When you open your eyes again, nothing has changed. The gelding still stands with his head slightly lowered, the lantern still burns, the sky through the high window is still the same deep indigo, and the quiet remains unbroken. You are exactly where you are meant to be, in the heart of the stable, on the cusp of the day's gentle work. You lower your hands from the horse's shoulder and let them hang at your sides, feeling the slight tingle of warmth that lingers in your palms. The currycomb lies in the straw at your feet, and you consider picking it up, but you do not yet. There is still this small, precious interval of pure stillness to savor, a time when nothing is required and everything is simply present. The gelding, as if understanding this, turns his head and nuzzles your shoulder once more, a gesture of quiet companionship, and then returns to his own stillness, his gaze fixed on the far wall, his breath flowing in and out like a slow tide. And so you remain, standing with the horse in the golden dimness as the night continues its patient journey toward a dawn that is still far away. The currycomb still rests in the straw at your feet, a dark shape against the pale gold bedding, and after a long, quiet pause you bend to retrieve it. Your fingers close around the wooden handle, feeling the polished grain and the small indentations that years of use have worn into the grip, and you straighten slowly, the tool now an extension of your hand. The iron teeth are cool from resting on the straw, but they will warm soon enough against the horse's coat, and you turn the comb over once, checking by habit that no bits of straw are caught between the rows. The gelding watches this small movement with one calm eye. His ears still droop sideways, his breathing as steady as it has been since you stepped into his stall. The lantern light falls across his shoulder in a golden sheet, and the dark bay hair gleams faintly, ready for the grooming to begin. You step closer to the horse, positioning yourself just behind his left shoulder, where the curve of his neck meets the broad slope of his withers. This is where you always start, a familiar landmark on the landscape of his body, and you place your left hand on his neck to steady yourself while the right hand brings the currycomb up to the coat. The iron teeth touch the hair with a faint, soft click, and you begin to move the comb in a slow, circular motion, pressing just firmly enough to reach through the short outer coat to the dust and loose hair beneath. The sound the currycomb makes is a quiet, rhythmic shushing, a whisper of metal against hide, and it fills the stall with a new layer of gentle noise. Each circle overlaps the last by half, so that no spot is missed, and the motion is so practiced that your hand does it almost without thought, the wrist rotating in a smooth, continuous pattern. The gelding responds to the grooming with a subtle shift of his weight, leaning just slightly into the pressure of the comb, and his lower lip droops further, a sign of deep relaxation. The large muscle of his shoulder twitches once under the currycomb's path, a tiny involuntary flutter, and then stills, accepting the sensation as familiar and pleasant. You work the comb in a small area at first, covering the flat of the shoulder blade with perhaps a dozen overlapping circles, and as you move, you can see the fine dust beginning to rise from the coat. It lifts in tiny particles that catch the lantern light and swirl upward in lazy spirals, a soft golden haze that hangs in the air for a moment before settling onto the straw or drifting out of the stall into the aisle. The dust has a dry, earthy smell, the accumulated evidence of the horse's rest and the hay he has rolled in, and it mingles with the other scents of the stable until it is just another note in the quiet atmosphere. Your hand continues its circling, moving now from the shoulder up onto the lower part of the neck, following the line of the gelding's crest. The hair here is slightly coarser, thicker where it begins to blend into the mane, and the currycomb meets it with a faintly different sound, a deeper, softer shush that still holds the same steady rhythm. You pay attention to the way the coat changes under your fingers, how the initial slight roughness of dust and dried sweat gives way to a smoother, cleaner texture after a few passes. The comb's teeth are doing their work, loosening everything that does not belong, and you can feel the small accumulation of debris building up in the spaces between the iron rows. Every few minutes, you pause and tap the curry comb gently against the wooden stall partition, a soft hollow clack that dislodges the collected dust and hair into a small pile on the straw, and then you resume your work without a break in the rhythm. The gelding's breathing continues, deep and slow, and every so often he exhales especially heavily, a long, contented sigh that seems to come from the very bottom of his lungs. And when he does this, you pause the comb's motion and let him enjoy the stillness. During these pauses, your left hand continues to rest on his neck, feeling the warmth of his skin and the vibration of his breath, and you watch the tiny dust motes dance in the lantern beam. Then, when his breathing returns to its normal pattern, you resume the circular strokes, picking up exactly where you left off. The horse never startles or pulls away. He stands as if anchored to the earth, his large body a monument of patience, and the relationship between the two of you in these moments is one of simple, wordless cooperation. You work your way down from the neck to the shoulder, and from the shoulder along the barrel of his body, where the ribs create a gentle curving landscape under the hide. The curry comb moves in the same steady circles, covering each rib space with methodical care, and the sound it makes changes subtly depending on the underlying structure. Over the ribs, where the bone is closer to the surface, the shush is a little crisper, while over the softer flank it becomes a muted whisper. The gelding's coat, now partially groomed, shows a visible difference between the areas you've worked and those you have not yet touched. The groomed patches are a deeper, richer brown, almost glowing in the lantern light, while the untouched areas remain slightly dulled and dusty, waiting their turn. This contrast is satisfying in a quiet, undemonstrative way, a small proof of the work's slow progress. You shift your stance slightly, moving half a step backward so you can reach further along the horse's side, and your sandal crunches softly on the straw as you settle into the new position. The curry comb follows your movement without hesitation, and now you are working on the middle section of the barrel, an area that requires you to extend your arm a little more. The motion remains the same, the wrist rotating in that practiced, easy circle, and you feel the muscles of your forearm beginning to warm with the repeated effort, a faint, pleasant sensation that signals the body's engagement with the task. The gelding turns his head to watch you for a moment, his large eye catching the lantern flame, and then he faces forward again, satisfied that all is as it should be. The dust continues to rise, a fine drifting cloud that hangs in the air of the stall like a soft golden mist, and you breathe it in without noticing, so familiar has it become. The curry comb's teeth are now slightly warm from the friction, and the handle has absorbed the heat of your palm, so that the tool feels less like a separate object and more like a natural part of your hand. You work along the horse's back, avoiding the spine itself where the bone is prominent, circling instead on either side of the backbone where the muscles are thick and strong. The gelding's top line is well developed from carrying a rider, and you can feel the firm, dense tissue under the coat, a testament to his breeding and his purpose. But you do not think of these things in words. You simply note them as sensations, part of the quiet catalogue you have been building since you entered the stall. A small piece of hay, caught in the longer hair near the horse's flank, works its way loose under the curry comb and drifts down to the straw, and you watch it fall with the same unhurried attention you give to everything else in this hour. The gelding shifts his weight again, cocking his hind leg so that the hoof rests on its toe, and this slight change in his posture allows you better access to the lower part of his barrel. You follow the opportunity, moving the comb down toward the edge of his belly, where the hair is finer and the skin a little more sensitive. Here, you lighten the pressure just slightly, letting the curry comb glide rather than press, and the horse's only response is a soft flick of his ear, a tiny acknowledgement that he notices the change and accepts it. The routine has by now settled into a rhythm that feels almost timeless. Each circle of the curry comb flows into the next. Each breath of the horse merges with your own, and the lantern's steady hiss provides a constant, gentle undertone. You are no longer aware of the passage of minutes. There is only the motion of your hand and the slow, gratifying transformation of the horse's coat from dull to bright. The stall walls enclose this small universe, and the outside world, with its cold air and distant stars, seems utterly removed, as if it exists in a different century. The grey mare in the next stall stamps a hoof once, and then is quiet, a sound that barely registers, so focused are you on the task at hand. After you have covered the entire left side of the horse from neck to flank, you stop and lower the curry comb, taking a moment to rest your arm and survey the work. The gelding's left side now glows with a deep, healthy sheen under the lantern light, the short hair lying smooth and uniform, all the dust and loose particles removed. The curry comb itself is full of debris, a dark, soft mass of dirt and hair caught between the iron teeth, and you tap it firmly against the partition several times, each tap a dull wooden thwack that echoes slightly in the quiet stable. The debris falls in a neat little pile, and you make a mental note to sweep it up later when all the grooming is done. For now, you simply turn the clean comb over in your hand and prepare to move to the horse's other side. You step carefully around the front of the gelding, passing close to his chest, and you run your left hand along his neck as you go, a gentle, continuous touch that lets him know where you are at every moment. The horse turns his head to watch you pass, his muzzle coming close enough that you feel his warm breath on the back of your neck, and then he faces forward again as you settle into position on his right side. The lantern light reaches this side a little less directly, the stall partition casting a soft shadow, but there is still enough glow to see the coat clearly, and you begin the curry comb's work anew. The first circle on the right shoulder produces the same soft shush, the same tiny cloud of dust, and the rhythm re-establishes itself as if it had never been broken. The right side of the horse is a mirror of the left, yet subtly different. The ribs feel the same under your hand, the muscles are the same shape, but the coat here has a slightly different pattern of dust accumulation, and there is a small, healed scar near the girth area that you rediscover each time. You work around it with the same care you always use. The curry comb circles never digging or scraping, just loosening and lifting. The gelding's breathing continues its slow oceanic tide, and you feel your own body settling even deeper into the calm that the grooming brings. A state of mind that is almost like meditation, but without any effort or intention. The motion of your wrist is entirely automatic now, the comb tracing its circles with the precision of long habit, and your thoughts, if there are any, drift past, like the dust motes, weightless and unimportant. You pause again to tap the comb clean, the sound blending with the creak of a timber somewhere in the stable roof, and then you continue along the right flank, the last area to be covered. The horse's coat here is slightly thinner, and you can feel the outline of the underlying muscles more distinctly, the strong gluteal mass that powers his movement. The curry comb circles over it gently, and the gelding responds with a slow, contented swish of his tail, the coarse hairs brushing against your arm for just a moment before settling back against his hocks. The gesture is so calm and automatic that it feels like a quiet thank you, a small signal from the horse that the grooming is exactly what he needs. When you have finished the right side, you step back and lower the curry comb to your side, taking a long, slow breath. The horse's entire coat now looks different than it did when you first entered the stall. The dark bay color has deepened into a rich, glossy brown that reflects the lantern light in a soft, even sheen, and the hair lies flat and smooth from shoulders to flanks, free of the dull patina of dust. The gelding himself seems to stand a little taller, his ears pricked forward with a quiet alertness that was not there before, and he turns his head to look at you with one large, calm eye. You return the look, your own gaze steady and soft, and the silence between you is full of mutual understanding. The curry comb is dirty again, and you clean it one more time against the partition, watching the debris fall into the growing pile on the straw. The iron teeth are now warm from the long use, and they glint dully in the lantern light, worn but still effective after many seasons. You will not need the curry comb again for this horse. Its work is done, and the next step will be the stiff brush, which will flick away the loosened particles and bring the coat to an even higher shine. But that is for later, and you are not in a hurry to move on. You stand in the quiet stall, the curry comb hanging loosely from your hand, and you let the gelding enjoy the feeling of his freshly cleaned coat. He does so by stretching his neck forward and giving a full body shake, a sudden rippling movement that starts at his head and travels all the way to his tail, loosening any last particles of dust and fluffing his mane, and then he settles back into stillness with a satisfied huff of breath. The shake has scattered a little straw around the stall, and a few pieces have landed on your sleeve, but you brush them off with an absent motion, your attention still on the horse. The lantern continues its steady burning, the high window still shows the indigo sky, and the stable around you remains wrapped in its deep, quiet peace. You have completed the first stage of the morning's work, the initial loosening and lifting, and the gelding stands as a testament to the value of slow, repetitive care. Soon you will exchange the curry comb for the stiff brush, but for now you simply stand with the horse, your hand resting once more on his warm shoulder, and you let the stillness stretch on into the unmeasured time before dawn. The curry comb is clean now, its iron teeth cool again after a final tap against the stall partition, and you step out of the gelding stall with the tool in your hand, moving quietly through the narrow gap of the door. The lantern continues its steady burn on the hook above the aisle, the flame as still as a painted teardrop, and its light falls on the stone shelf where the other tools wait in their neat row. You set the curry comb down in its place, the iron meeting the stone with a soft, dull click, and you let your gaze move along the lineup, the stiff brush, the soft brush, the folded cloth, the small tin cup of water. The stiff brush you will save for later, perhaps for the next horse, but for the bay gelding, who now stands with a coat full of loosened dust, the soft brush is the next step, its finer bristles suited for flicking away the particles and revealing the deep shine beneath. You lift it from the shelf, feeling the lighter weight in your hand, the wooden handle smooth and slightly narrower than the curry comb's grip, and you run your thumb across the bristle tips. They are softer than the stiff brush's boar hair, with a gentle silky give that promises a delicate touch, and they make a faint whispery sound against your skin. With the soft brush held loosely, you return to the bay gelding stall, sliding the door open just enough to slip back inside. The horse has not moved. He stands exactly as you left him, his weight on 3 legs, his head low, the lantern's glow now catching the side of his face and the gentle curve of his neck. The air in the stall is still thick with the faint haze of dust you raise with the currycomb, tiny motes that drift in slow, suspended spirals, and the smell of clean horse and disturbed hay lingers pleasantly. You close the stall door behind you with a soft wooden nudge, and the small space feels even more intimate now, the two of you enclosed in warmth and quiet. The gelding's ear rotates toward you, acknowledging your return, and you step up to his left shoulder, placing your free hand on his neck, where the coat is already smooth and warm from the currycomb's work. You begin with the soft brush at the same starting point, the flat of the shoulder, and you lay the bristles against the hair with a gentle, even pressure. The first stroke is a long, sweeping motion that follows the direction of the coat, from the crest of the shoulder down toward the elbow, and the sound it makes is a soft, whisking sigh, higher and finer than the currycomb's shush. The bristles gather the loosened dust and tiny flecks of dander that the currycomb brought to the surface, carrying them away in a faint pale cloud that lifts and then settles. You repeat the stroke, overlapping the first by a small margin, and the rhythm establishes itself quickly, a long, flowing sweep, a brief lift of the brush, another sweep beside it. The motion is different from the circular work of the currycomb. It is more linear, more like painting wide, even stripes across a canvas, and your wrist moves with a fluid, continuous motion that feels almost like water flowing. As you brush, you begin to notice the details of the bay's coat with a new clarity. Under the soft bristles, the hair that had been dulled by dust now responds by lying flat and gleaming, each individual strand catching the lantern light and throwing it back as a deep reddish-brown luster. The color is richer than you remembered, a dark mahogany at the roots that lightens to a warm chestnut at the tips, and the sheen that follows the brushstroke seems to ripple across the muscle like light on a calm lake. You watch the transformation happen in real time, the brushed area becoming a dark mirror while the unbrushed area remains matte and dusty, and the contrast is so gradual, so hypnotic, that you lose yourself in the simple act of observation. Your hand continues its sweeping path, and the brush's bristles, now carrying a fine load of particles, need to be cleaned. You pause and flick the bristles against the wooden partition with a quick, sharp motion, the dust flying off in a small puff, and then you resume without breaking the flow. The gelding sighs, a long, low exhalation that seems to begin deep in his barrel and travel all the way up through his wide nostrils, and his lower lip, already drooping, loosens even further until it hangs slack and quivering slightly. His eyes are half closed, the long lashes resting against the dark skin beneath, and the peace that radiates from him is so profound that you feel it seeping into your own bones. You move the soft brush up to his neck, following the line of the crest where the mane begins, and you take care to brush around the coarse mane hairs without pulling or tangling them. The bristles whisper against the shorter coat here, flicking away the last remnants of the currycomb's work, and the neck muscles, thick and corded, stand out in subtle relief under the now glossy hide. You can see the faint outline of the jugular vein, pulsing slowly, a deep, regular beat that you can count if you wish. Your hand travels down the neck to the point of the shoulder, then along the front of the chest, where the coat is slightly thinner and the skin more sensitive. Here you lighten the pressure even further, letting the brush's own weight do most of the work, and the horse responds by leaning just a fraction into the stroke. A minute shift of his mass that tells you he welcomes the sensation. The soft brush glides over the curve of his pectoral muscles, and the dust that rises here is finer, almost invisible, a faint shimmer that vanishes as soon as it appears. You are aware of your own breathing now, how it has become as slow and deep as the horse's, and your body moves with a gentle, almost trance-like economy. No wasted motion, no hurry. The brush strokes become longer, more leisurely, as if there is all the time in the world, and indeed, in this stable there is. You work your way along the gelding's barrel, retracing the path you took with the curry comb, and you notice how the soft brush refines what the comb began. The coat that was merely clean before now acquires a polished, almost glossy finish, the individual hairs aligning perfectly like the nap of fine velvet. The light from the lantern, which enters the stall at a low angle, catches the subtle contours of the horse's body, the swell of the ribcage, the hollow behind the elbow, the gentle slope toward the flank, each shape highlighted by a soft golden edge. Your eyes trace these lines as your hand moves, and you feel a quiet appreciation for the beauty of the animal, a beauty that is not loud or dramatic, but as understated as the rest of the morning. The soft brush requires more frequent cleaning than the curry comb, because its bristles hold the fine dust, and you pause every few minutes to tap it against the partition. The sound is a series of light, staccato clicks that echo for just a moment before being absorbed by the straw and the timber, and then the brushing resumes, the long, sweeping strokes picking up exactly where they left off. You have by now covered the left shoulder, neck, barrel, and flank, and you shift your stance to reach the hindquarters, where the large gluteal muscles curve powerfully beneath the skin. The brushstrokes here are broader, covering more area with each pass, and the coat responds with the same deep, lustrous shine. The gelding swishes his tail once, lazily, and the coarse hairs brush against your arm before settling, a gentle acknowledgement that you are in his space and he does not mind. When the left side is fully brushed, you step back and take a moment to look at the horse. The change is remarkable, though you've seen it 100 times before, and each time it feels like a small, quiet miracle. The bay's coat now gleams from neck to hip, a dark, polished surface that seems to absorb and reflect the lantern light in equal measure, and the dust that had dulled it is gone, replaced by a depth of color that speaks of health and good care. The gelding himself seems to know he looks better. He lifts his head a fraction, his ears coming forward with a soft, alert expression, and he turns to look at you with one large, dark eye that holds a glint of the flame. You give him a gentle pat on the neck, your palm meeting the smooth, warm coat, and then you move around to his right side to begin the process again. On the right side, the lantern light is slightly dimmer, casting longer shadows that make the texture of the coat harder to see, but your hands know the terrain by now. You start at the right shoulder with the same long, sweeping strokes, and the soft brush whispers its familiar, silky song. The dust on this side is a little thicker, perhaps because the horse tends to lean against the right partition when he sleeps, and the brush lifts it in slightly larger clouds that take longer to settle. You work methodically, stroke by overlapping stroke, and you notice the small scar near the girth again, a thin white line where the hair grows in a different direction. The soft bristles glide over it without catching, and you note how the scar tissue is smooth and flat, well healed and untroublesome. The gelding stands just as calmly on this side, his breathing deep and even, and once he shifts his weight to the left, giving you easier access to his lower barrel, a cooperation that seems almost deliberate. As you brush the right flank, you become aware of the subtle variations in the coat's texture that you can feel through the brush handle. There are areas where the hair is slightly thicker, a denser undercoat that speaks of the coming winter, and areas where it is thinner and finer, over the ribs and behind the elbow. The soft brush communicates all of this to your hand as a series of tiny tactile messages. A slight resistance here, a smooth glide there, the faint catch of a small tangle that needs an extra stroke. You respond to each variation without conscious thought, adjusting the pressure, the angle, the speed of the stroke, so that the brushing becomes a kind of quiet conversation between you and the horse, a dialogue conducted entirely through touch. The gelding's skin twitches occasionally, a tiny involuntary flutter that travels across his barrel like a ripple on a pond, and then it stills, and the brushing continues. You clean the brush several more times against the partition, the small pile of dust on the straw growing incrementally with each tap, and you notice that the bristles themselves are now slightly warm from the friction, soft and pliable. The handle, too, has absorbed the heat of your hand, and it fits your grip as if it were made for you alone. The repetition of the strokes has become a meditation, each sweep of the brush a moment of pure, undivided attention, and the world beyond the stable has faded to a faint, distant murmur that you can no longer hear. There is only the horse, the brush, the lantern, and the slow, steady rhythm of the work. When you finish the right side, you pause and lower the brush, taking a long, slow breath that fills your lungs with the warm, hay-scented air. The gelding's entire coat now shines from nose to tail, a uniform, glossy, dark bay that seems almost to glow from within, and the soft brush has done its work perfectly. You run your free hand over the horse's shoulder, feeling the silkiness of the brushed coat under your palm, and the sensation is deeply satisfying, a tactile reward for the slow, careful effort. The horse turns his head and nuzzles your sleeve again, his whiskers tickling the fabric, and you let him, standing still as he snuffles gently and then withdraws, apparently content. You look at the soft brush in your hand, its bristles now dulled with a fine coating of residual dust, and you decide it needs a more thorough cleaning before you move on to the next horse. You step out of the stall, leaving the gelding to his quiet repose, and walk to the stone shelf where you fetch the currycomb and use its iron teeth to gently rake through the soft brush's bristles, loosening the trapped dust so that it falls onto the stone in a fine grey powder. You then tap the brush against the shelf's edge, a series of soft, rhythmic thuds, and finally you blow across the bristles with a gentle puff of breath, sending the last particles swirling into the lantern's glow. The brush is clean and ready again, and you set it down beside the currycomb, lining it up neatly. Before returning to the horse for the final cloth wipe, you glance up at the high window. The square of sky is still a deep, velvety indigo, the single star still visible, but the blackness seems perhaps a shade less absolute than before, as if the night has imperceptibly begun to think about the dawn. It is a change so subtle that you might be imagining it, and you do not dwell on the thought. You simply note it and turn back to the task at hand. The gelding waits in his stall, his coat now fully brushed and gleaming, and there is only the soft cloth left to use, a gentle polish that will remove any last traces of dust and leave him feeling fresh and cared for. You pick up the folded cotton cloth and the small tin cup of water, and you step back into the stall to finish the morning's work with the bay horse, the first of 8, as the stable continues its quiet, patient existence in the deep, pre-dawn stillness. The soft brush is clean and resting on the stone shelf, its bristles still faintly warm from the long work on the bay gelding, and you pick up the folded cotton cloth, a square of undyed fabric that has been washed so many times it feels almost like soft leather. Beside it, the small tin cup of water catches the lantern light, a tiny, wavering reflection of the flame on its surface, and you dip a corner of the cloth into the cool liquid, letting it soak just enough to become damp without dripping. The bay gelding stands in his stall, his coat gleaming from shoulder to flank, and he turns his head as you slide the door open again, his ears pricking forward with a mild, sleepy curiosity. You step inside and approach his head, moving slowly so as not to surprise him, and you bring the damp cloth up to his forehead, where a small patch of dust still clings near the forelock. The cloth glides over the short, fine hair with a soft, moist sound, and the dust lifts away easily, leaving the dark brown skin beneath clean and cool. You wipe around his eyes with particular gentleness, barely touching the delicate skin, and the gelding blinks slowly, his long lashes brushing against the cloth, accepting the attention without pulling away. You then wipe his muzzle, where the whiskers are stiff and slightly ticklish, and you clean the edges of his nostrils, removing a tiny trace of dried hay. The horse exhales a warm, damp breath onto your hand, and you feel the subtle vibration of a low, contented nicker. When you are done, you pat his neck once, a soft, flat-palmed touch, and you slide the stall door closed with a gentle thud of wood on wood, leaving the bay in his quiet, well-groomed peace. With the cloth still in your hand, you walk the few steps down the aisle to where the stone shelf waits, and you place the cloth beside the brushes, folding it once more into a neat square. The tools are all accounted for: the currycomb, the stiff brush, the soft brush, the cloth, the cup of water. The lantern continues to burn overhead, its flame as steady as a heartbeat, and the aisle stretches away in both directions, the stalls on either side holding their large shadowy occupants. You turn now toward the next stall, where a lighter shape waits, a pale dappled form that stands out against the darker wood of the partition. This is the grey mare, and as you approach her stall, you notice that she has turned her head slightly, one ear angled toward you, the other listening to something only she can hear. Her coat, even in the dim light, is a soft, silvery grey, marked with delicate rings of darker dapple that seem to shift as she breathes, like moonlight on moving water. The mare watches you with calm, intelligent eyes, her gaze steady and unhurried, and you stop just outside her stall door, letting her see you fully. Her head is held a little higher than the bay's, and her neck arches with a natural elegance, the mane falling in a cascade of pale grey and white that catches the lantern light in a soft, luminous glow. She's lighter in build, her legs long and slender, and her tail, a full plume of silvery hair, hangs nearly to the ground, swishing gently once as if in greeting. You place your hand on the top edge of the stall door, the wood cool and smooth, and you speak a low, quiet word, the same breathy murmur you use with all the horses, a sound that is less a word and more a vibration of reassurance. The mare's ears flick forward, then relax sideways, and she shifts her weight, a subtle rolling motion that seems to say she is ready for you. You slide the stall door open with the same careful, even pressure you used before, and the wood rumbles softly in its track. The gap widens just enough for you to step through, and you enter the mare's stall, closing the door behind you with a gentle nudge. The space is identical to the bay's stall in dimensions, the same wooden walls, the same straw-covered floor, the same feeder with its remnants of hay. But the atmosphere feels different, lighter perhaps because of the mare's pale coat that seems to gather and hold whatever light there is. The lantern's glow, entering through the gaps in the partition, falls on her back and turns the silver dapples into a shimmering pattern, and you can see the fine, delicate texture of her hair, each strand seemingly finer than the bay's, catching the light individually. You stand still for a moment, letting the mare become accustomed to your presence inside her space, and she lowers her head slightly, bringing her muzzle close to your shoulder. Her breath is warm and smells of sweet hay, and she snuffles gently at your sleeve, her whiskers grazing the fabric with a light, tickling touch. You raise your free hand and place it on her neck, just behind her jaw, and you feel the soft, velvety skin and the steady throb of her pulse beneath. Her coat is cooler than the bay's, a subtle difference that you note without judgment, and the dapples, which from a distance appeared as rings, now reveal themselves to be clusters of slightly darker hair that form irregular, softly edged circles, unique to her and her alone. The mare blinks slowly, her long white lashes standing out against the grey of her face, and she exhales a long, quiet sigh, a sound so gentle it might be the rustle of straw. You stand with her like this for a while, your hand resting on her neck, your breathing falling into the same slow rhythm as hers, and the quiet of the stable wraps around you both. The grey mare is not as broad or as heavy as the bay, and there is a delicacy to her presence, a fineness that makes you instinctively gentle. You notice the way her ears move, catching tiny sounds, the creak of a timber, the distant call of the nightjar, the soft hiss of the lantern, and then relaxing again, as if each sound is noted and dismissed as harmless. You can feel the slight tremor of a muscle in her shoulder, a tiny involuntary twitch, and you stroke it with your thumb until it stills, a soothing, automatic gesture. After the quiet greeting, you step back and reach for the curry comb, which you had left on the stone shelf after cleaning it. You slide out of the stall briefly, retrieve the comb, and return, the iron teeth cool in your hand. The mare watches the tool with mild interest, her eyes following the dark shape of it, and you approach her left shoulder, positioning yourself just as you did with the bay. But this time, before you begin, you run your hand over her coat, feeling the texture. It is softer than the bay's, finer and silkier, and you notice that the hair lies in a slightly different direction along the flank, a small quirk that you file away. Then you bring the curry comb up to the coat and start the first slow circle at her shoulder, the iron teeth making contact with a faint, high-pitched shush that is noticeably different from the deeper sound on the bay's coat. The difference comes from the lighter, finer hair, which offers less resistance and produces a thinner, almost whispery tone, and you adjust the pressure slightly, making it a fraction lighter to match her sensitivity. The mare's response is immediate and calm. She leans just barely into the pressure, a subtle shift that is almost imperceptible, and her lower lip loosens, though not as dramatically as the bay's. Her breathing, which was already soft, becomes even quieter, a series of shallow, delicate breaths that barely stir the air. You work the currycomb in the same small, overlapping circles, starting at the shoulder and moving gradually up the neck, and you see the dust begin to rise. On the grey coat, the dust shows as a faint, pale cloud that swirls upward in the lantern light, and it has a different character, finer and whiter, like a small puff of flour. The dapples seem to blur and then sharpen again as you pass the comb over them, the darker clusters of hair resisting the dust just enough to create a subtle, shifting pattern, and you find yourself watching the play of light and shadow on her coat with a quiet fascination. The mare's skin proves to be more sensitive than the bay's, particularly as you work down toward her flank and the area behind her elbow. When the currycomb passes over these places, she flinches almost imperceptibly, a tiny, brief tensing of the muscle that you feel through the comb's handle, and you respond by lightening the pressure even further, letting the comb glide rather than press. The circular motion becomes gentler, the teeth barely grazing the surface of her coat, and the mare relaxes again, her ear flicking back once in acknowledgement and then settling. You make a mental note to be especially careful around her flanks when you reach the other side, and you continue your work with a slower, more deliberate pace, taking the time to watch her reactions. The dust rises in smaller quantities now, as if her coat holds less debris, and the currycomb's teeth need less frequent cleaning. Still, you pause every so often to tap it against the wooden partition. The sound a soft, hollow thwack that echoes faintly, and the debris that falls onto the straw is a pale, greyish dust that matches her coat. As you move the currycomb along her back, you notice the subtle contours of her spine, the way the vertebrae rise in a gentle ridge beneath the skin, and you avoid the direct center, circling instead on either side where the muscles are long and lean. The mare's top line is elegant, built for agility rather than sheer power, and you can feel the springiness of her frame, the way she seems poised even in stillness. Her tail swishes once, a slow rhythmic motion that sends a faint breeze of air across your arm, and you catch the clean, faintly sweet scent of the straw that clings to the long hairs. The currycomb sound continues, that high, whispery shush, blending with the lantern's hiss and the mare's soft breathing, and you find yourself sinking once again into the peaceful monotony of the task. Time becomes liquid, flowing without measure, and the only things that exist are the horse, the comb, and the small golden circle of light that encloses you both. You complete the left side of the mare with the same thorough, unhurried care you gave the bay, covering every inch from neck to hip, and you step back to look at the results. The grey coat, where it has been curried, now glows with a soft, silvery brightness, the dapples standing out more clearly against the lighter background, and the dust is gone, replaced by a clean, healthy sheen. The mare turns her head to look at you, her dark eye calm and unblinking, and you give her a gentle stroke on the neck with your free hand before moving around to her right side. The partition casts a soft shadow here, but the lantern light still reaches, and you begin the currycomb circles on the right shoulder, continuing the same delicate, adjusted pressure. The mare stands as still as a statue, her only movement, the slow blink of her eyes and the steady rise and fall of her breathing, and you work your way along her right side with the same methodical patience, noting the small, unique details, a tiny white scar on her flank, a swirl of hair near her girth that grows in a different direction, a slight ticklishness near her ribs that makes her skin twitch before she settles again. Each of these things you accommodate without thought, your hands knowing what to do through long practice, and the grooming becomes a quiet, wordless dialogue of touch and response. When the right side is finished, you clean the curry comb one final time against the partition, the pale dust falling in a soft cascade onto the straw, and you stand for a moment beside the mare, your hand resting on her warm, smooth coat. The silence in the stall is deep and full, broken only by the gentle sounds of the stable, and the mare lowers her head, bringing her muzzle close to your chest, her breath a warm, rhythmic puff against your clothing. You stroke her forehead with your thumb, feeling the fine silky hair and the solid bone beneath, and you know that the first stage of her grooming is complete. Soon you will exchange the curry comb for the soft brush, just as you did with the bay, but for now you are content to stand still, sharing the quiet with this pale, elegant creature as the night outside continues its slow, imperceptible turn toward dawn. With the curry comb clean and the grey mare's coat now free of dust on both sides, you slide open her stall door and step out into the aisle, leaving her to rest for a moment in the quiet. The lantern burns overhead, its flame steady inside the glass chimney, and the soft hiss of the burning oil fills the air with a constant, gentle whisper. You cross to the stone shelf and set the curry comb down beside the stiff brush and the soft brush, aligning it carefully, and you pick up the folded cotton cloth to dab a few beads of moisture from your fingers. The stable around you is calm, the other horses standing in their stalls, with only the occasional rustle of straw, or the slow, deep exhale of a sleeping animal, and the high window still shows the same square of indigo sky, unchanged. You let your gaze wander along the aisle, and your eyes settle on a set of reins hanging from a wooden peg driven into one of the support pillars near the tack area. The leather is a dark, rich brown in the lantern light, its surface gleaming faintly with old oil, and the brass buckles catch tiny glints of the flame. You decide, without hurry, to inspect them now while the mare rests. You walk the few steps to the pillar, your sandals making a soft, dry sound on the packed earth, and you reach up to lift the reins from their peg. The leather is cool against your fingers, smooth from long handling, and you feel the slight pleasant weight of the bit still attached at one end, a simple iron snaffle that clinks softly as you gather the reins into both hands. You bring the leather close to the lantern's light, turning it over to examine the stitching that runs along the edges in a double row of waxed thread. The stitches are even and tight, their wax coating still present and uncracked, and you run your thumb over them, feeling the tiny ridges that speak of careful craftsmanship. The leather itself is supple, bending easily without any sign of dryness or cracking, and you bend a section gently between your fingers, watching the surface to see if any fine lines appear. None do, and you nod slightly to yourself, satisfied that the reins remain in good condition after many uses. You let the reins drape over your left forearm, and move to the wooden chest beneath the stone shelf, where you keep a small pot of leather balm. The pot is a simple clay vessel with a fitted lid, cool to the touch, and you pry the lid off with your thumb, releasing a faint beeswax and oil fragrance that mingles with the stable's other scents. Inside, the balm is a pale amber color, smooth and slightly greasy, and you dip 2 fingers into it, scooping up a small amount. You return to the reins and work the balm into the leather near the bit, where the stitching is most exposed to sweat and friction, rubbing it in with slow circular motions of your thumb. The leather absorbs the balm gradually, darkening slightly where you've applied it, and you spend a long time working it into the grain, making sure every stitch is coated. The motion is repetitive and calming, your thumb tracing the same small circles over and over, and the reins grow warmer under your touch as the friction combines with the balm. When the bit area is treated, you move along the length of the reins, checking the sections that pass through the rider's hands. Here, the leather is a little smoother still, polished by grip, and it needs only a light touch of balm to maintain its suppleness. You apply a thin film and rub it in gently, watching the surface take on a deeper, richer brown. Then you wipe away any excess with a corner of the cotton cloth you still carry. The brass buckles you check next, ensuring each tongue moves freely in its hole and that the metal shows no sign of verdigris. One buckle is slightly stiff, so you work it back and forth a few times with a quiet, metallic tick until it loosens, and then you give it a small dab of oil from a tiny bottle on the shelf, wiping the brass until it gleams dully. The bit itself, an unjointed snaffle of plain iron, is cool and smooth. You run the cloth over it to remove any dust, and the iron darkens slightly from the moisture, then returns to its matte grey. The work is small and unhurried, a quiet maintenance that requires no deep thought, only the steady, gentle attention of your hands. After several minutes, you are satisfied with the reins. You coil them loosely and hang them back on the wooden peg, arranging them so they will not tangle, and you close the clay pot of balm, returning it to the chest. Your fingers are now faintly greasy, smelling of beeswax, and you wipe them on the cloth before folding it again and setting it aside. The small interruption has blended seamlessly into the rhythm of the morning, a natural pause between the grooming of one horse and the next, and you feel no sense of time lost, only the quiet satisfaction of a task done. You now turn your attention back to the grey mare, who stands in her stall with her head turned toward you, one ear cocked forward as if she has been following your movements. You walk to her stall door and slide it open, stepping inside once more, and you let the door rest against your back as you approach her shoulder. The mare's coat, still only curried, has a soft, matte glow, and you can see the dapples shifting as she breathes. You rest your hand on her neck and then run your palm down her left foreleg, a long, firm stroke that signals your intention. The mare understands this touch. She shifts her weight to the right and lifts her left front hoof, offering it to you with the ease of long training. You cup the hoof in your hand, feeling the hard, warm wall and the coolness of the shoe's iron rim, and you bend slightly to support it against your thigh. From your sash, you take a blunt wooden pick, a simple tool carved from a piece of oak, its tip rounded and smooth from use. You begin to clean the underside of the hoof, starting at the heel and working forward, carefully removing the packed earth and bits of straw that have lodged in the grooves on either side of the frog. The dirt comes away in small dry clumps that fall onto the straw with a soft patter, and you work the pick gently, never forcing, always following the natural lines of the hoof. The frog itself is a soft, rubbery triangle, slightly moist, and you take care not to press too hard, cleaning around its edges with small, light strokes. The mare stands perfectly still, her weight balanced, and you can feel the tiny adjustments she makes in her posture to help you. The smell of the cleaned hoof is earthy and warm, a clean, organic scent that is part of the stable's larger fragrance, and it rises up to you as you work. When the left forehoof is clean, You run your thumb over the sole to check for any stones or bruises, finding only the smooth, unbroken surface of healthy tissue. You lower the hoof gently, letting it rest back on the straw with a soft clop, and you give the mare a brief pat on the shoulder before moving to her left hind leg. You run your hand down the back of her cannon bone, and the mare shifts her weight forward, lifting the hind hoof and holding it slightly back. You take the hoof in your hand, feeling the greater weight in the thicker wall, and you support it against your knee as you begin to clean. The hind hooves tend to hold more debris, and you work the pick into the deeper crevices of the frog where small stones sometimes hide, but today you find only packed straw and a little dried mud, which fall away in soft, crumbling pieces. The mare's tail swishes once, a lazy, gentle movement that brushes against your shoulder, and you steady the hoof without reacting, continuing the slow, methodical cleaning. The wooden pick makes a soft scraping sound against the sole, a rhythmic, repetitive noise that blends with the lantern's hiss and the mare's breathing. You clean the right hind hoof next, moving around the mare's body with a slow, deliberate step, and you run your hand down the leg to ask for the lift. The mare obliges, shifting weight to her left side, and you cup the hoof, feeling the warmth of the wall and the slight roughness of the shoe. This hoof has a small chip in the outer wall near the toe, an old imperfection that you have noted before, and you run the pick carefully around it to ensure no dirt is trapped. The cleaning follows the same pattern, heel to toe, along the grooves, around the frog, gentle and thorough, and the dirt falls away in a fine dark dust that settles on the straw. The mare's breathing remains deep and even, and she occasionally turns her head to watch you, her large eyes soft and trusting, before facing forward again. When this hoof is clean, you lower it with the same soft clop, and you feel the solid placement of it on the ground, the mare's weight settling evenly. Finally, you move to the right forehoof, the last one, and you repeat the request, running your hand down the leg from shoulder to fetlock. The mare lifts the hoof promptly, and you cradle it against your thigh, beginning the cleaning with the same careful, unhurried strokes. The dirt on this hoof is lighter, mostly straw dust, and it clears quickly, leaving the sole pale and clean. You notice the small branching lines of the laminae visible through the translucent outer wall, a delicate living pattern that speaks of the mare's health, and you trace them briefly with the tip of the pick before wiping the hoof with your palm. The hoof wall feels warm and smooth under your hand, and you give the frog a final gentle press with your thumb to check its resilience, finding it firm and springy. Satisfied, you lower the hoof to the straw, and the mare sets it down with a final soft clop that seems to echo in the quiet stall for just a moment before fading. You straighten up, tucking the wooden pick back into your sash, and you place both hands on the mare's flank for a moment, feeling the slow, steady rise and fall of her breathing. The hoof cleaning has taken its own small space of time, a quiet, necessary interlude, and now the mare stands with all 4 feet clean and comfortable, her pale coat still waiting for the soft brush. You stroke her neck once, running your hand along the crest where the silvery mane falls in a cascade, and you feel the warmth of her skin beneath the fine hair. The stable around you remains still, the other horses undisturbed, and the lantern continues its patient burn, the flame as unwavering as it has been all morning. You slide the stall door open and step back into the aisle, leaving the grey mare to her rest, and you notice that the air in the stable is just as calm as before, filled with the familiar sense of hay, leather, and horses. all of it unchanged by the passage of the slow dark hours. The grey mare is now clean of hoof and coat, her silver dapples catching the lantern light as she stands in patient repose, and you leave her stall with a quiet sense of completion. The stall door slides shut behind you with a soft wooden murmur, and you pause in the aisle, letting your hands rest at your sides while you take a slow, deep breath of the stable's warm, hay-scented air. The lantern overhead continues its tireless vigil, the flame a steady golden teardrop that has not wavered since you first lit it, and the shadows it casts along the aisle are soft and familiar. On the stone shelf, the currycomb, stiff brush, soft brush, and folded cloth wait in their neat arrangement, and you return the currycomb to its place, wiping a smudge of grey dust from the iron teeth with your thumb before setting it down. The stiff brush you have not yet used this morning, its boar hair bristles still clean and springy, and you leave it for now, knowing it will find its purpose on another horse. For the mare, the soft brush will be enough to finish what the currycomb began, and you lift it from the shelf, feeling the lighter, more delicate weight in your hand. You walk back to the mare's stall, the soft brush held loosely, and slide the door open to step inside. The mare turns her head toward you, her dark eye calm and luminous, and you settle into position at her left shoulder as naturally as if you had never left. You lay the soft brush against her coat and begin the first long, sweeping stroke, the bristles gliding over the fine, pale hair with a sound that is almost a whisper, a breathy, silken shush that is higher and fainter than the sound on the bay. The dust that rises is minimal, a faint, silvery haze that catches the lantern light for only a moment before drifting away, and the mare's coat responds immediately to the brushing, the dapples deepening in contrast as the surrounding hair takes on a soft, luminous glow. The grey hairs, which had seemed merely clean before, now acquire a pearlescent quality, each strand reflecting a tiny point of light, so that the mare looks almost as if she were wearing a coat of watered silk. You work the brush in slow flowing strokes, following the direction of the hair from shoulder to flank, and the mare leans ever so slightly into the pressure, her lower lip loosening in quiet contentment. The soft brush glides over the contours of her body with an ease that speaks of her fine coat and sensitive skin, and you continue to use the lighter pressure you learned during the currycomb's work. Over her flanks, where the skin is most tender, you let the brush barely graze the surface, the bristle tips just kissing the hair, and the mare's only response is a soft, fluttering twitch of the skin, a tiny, fleeting ripple that passes and then subsides. You pause occasionally to clean the brush, tapping it gently against the partition, and the dust that falls is almost white, as fine as flour, settling onto the straw in a thin, pale layer. The brushing takes time, but time is a thing you have in abundance, and you let each stroke stretch to its full length, unhurried and deliberate. The mare's breathing is a quiet, rhythmic counterpoint to the brush's whisper, and you find yourself matching your own breath to hers, a slow, unthinking synchrony that deepens the calm. When you have finished the left side, you move around to the right and repeat the process, the brush strokes just as long and gentle, the dust just as fine. The mare stands perfectly still, her tail swishing once to settle a stray hair, and you can see the muscles of her back and hindquarters relax visibly as the brushing continues. When the right side is done, you step back and look at her, a pale, glowing shape in the dim light, her coat now fully brushed to a soft, even sheen. You give her a final pat on the neck, a flat palmed touch that conveys a quiet gratitude, and then you slide her stall door closed and leave her to her rest. The soft brush you carry back to the stone shelf, where you clean it with the currycomb's help, raking the iron teeth gently through the bristles to remove the fine grey dust, and then you set it down beside the other tools. You now turn your attention to the third stall along the left row, where a sturdy chestnut gelding waits. As you approach his stall, your gaze passes briefly over the high window set into the rear wall, and you notice something that makes you pause. The square of sky that had been a deep, velvety indigo is no longer absolute in its darkness. It has shifted, almost imperceptibly, to a shade closer to deep charcoal, a subtle softening of the edges of the black. The single star that you had seen earlier is gone, swallowed by the gradual paling, and the quality of the darkness outside has changed from the thick, impenetrable black of full night to something that holds the faintest hint of a future grey. It is not yet dawn, not even close to dawn, but the first tentative movement toward morning has begun, a change so minute that only someone who has spent hours in the stable would notice it. You let the observation settle in your mind without commentary, and you turn back to the chestnut's stall. The chestnut gelding is a sturdy, compact horse, his coat a rich reddish brown that seems to absorb the lantern light and hold it deep within the fibres of his hair. His neck is thick and strong, his shoulders broad and well muscled, and his legs are solid and straight, with a light feathering of hair around the fetlocks. He stands with his head slightly lowered, his ears relaxed sideways, and as you stop outside his stall door, he opens his eyes fully and regards you with a calm, level gaze. There is a steadiness to him, a grounded, unflappable quality that you have always appreciated, and you feel the quiet assurance of his presence as you place your hand on the top of the stall door. He does not nicker or shift. He simply waits, his breathing slow and deep, his chest rising and falling in a regular, unhurried rhythm that you can see even from where you stand. You slide the stall door open and step inside, closing it behind you, and the chestnut turns his head to watch you, his large dark eyes reflecting the lantern flame as twin points of gold. His coat, even before grooming, has a natural luster, a deep russet warmth that catches the light and holds it, and you can see the subtle variations in colour, darker along his back, lighter on his flanks, with a faint, coppery sheen along his neck. You step up to his left shoulder and place your hand flat on the warm, solid muscle, feeling the familiar heat and the slow, steady pulse of life beneath. The chestnut's coat is slightly coarser than the bays and the greys, a denser, more robust hair that speaks of his hardier constitution, and you can feel the difference under your palm as you stroke him gently. He leans into the touch with a small, contented sigh, his lower lip beginning to droop, and you stand with him for a while, letting the greeting stretch out in the quiet dark. The stall is much like the others, the same wooden walls, the same straw-covered floor, the same small feeder with its few remaining strands of hay, but the presence of the chestnut fills it with a different energy, a calm, grounded solidity that feels almost like the earth itself. His scent is warm and slightly sweet, a clean, hay and horse fragrance that rises from his coat as you stand close. You can see the small individual details of his body, a white star on his forehead, small and irregular, a faint scar on his left knee, old and white, a swirl of hair on his chest where the coat grows in a tight, circular pattern. All these things are familiar to you, as familiar as the lines on your own hands, and you note them again with the quiet, wordless attention that has become the habit of these hours. After the greeting, you step back and reach for the currycomb, which you have fetched from the stone shelf before entering. The iron teeth are cool in your hand, and you bring the comb up to the chestnut's shoulder, beginning the first slow circle. The sound that comes is different again, a deeper, fuller shush than the grey mare's whisper, but not quite as heavy as the bay's. The coarser hair offers a pleasant, medium resistance, and the currycomb moves through it with a satisfying rhythmic scrape that fills the stall with its steady voice. The dust that rises is a warm brownish haze, the colour of dried earth, and it swirls upward in the lantern light, catching the golden glow and dancing in lazy spirals before settling onto the straw. The chestnut gelding accepts the grooming with his characteristic steadiness, neither leaning heavily nor flinching, simply standing as if anchored, his breathing deep and regular, his ears occasionally flicking back to listen to the sound of the comb. You work in the same small, overlapping circles, starting at the shoulder and moving gradually up the neck where the mane grows thick and dark, a deep brown that is almost black. The currycomb navigates around the coarse mane hairs, loosening the dust and dried sweat that have accumulated near the crest, and you pause to tap the comb clean against the partition, the sound a dull wooden thock that reverberates softly. The chestnut's coat, as it is curried, reveals a deeper, richer color beneath the surface dust, a burnt-umber glow that seems to radiate warmth, and you can see the healthy, elastic quality of the skin as it moves under your hand. The muscles of his shoulder and neck are firm and well-defined, and the currycomb traces their contours as if mapping a familiar terrain. You continue along his barrel, the circles growing wider to cover the broad expanse of his ribs, and you feel the steady, rhythmic motion beginning to work its familiar calm on your own mind. The repetition of the currycomb circles, the rise and fall of the chestnut's breathing, the soft hiss of the lantern, all of it weaves together into a single seamless fabric of quiet. The chestnut sighs once, a long, deep exhalation that sends a warm puff of air across your arm, and you pause the comb's motion to let him enjoy the moment, your hand resting on his warm coat. Then you resume, circling along his flank and down toward his hindquarters, where the muscles are thick and powerful. The currycomb sound continues, steady and unhurried, and the dust falls away in a fine brown cloud that settles onto the straw like a faint mist. When you finish the left side, you step around to the right and begin again. The same circles, the same pressure, the same slow, methodical coverage. The chestnut turns his head briefly to watch you, his dark eye calm and unblinking, and then he faces forward again, his ears relaxing. The grooming on this side reveals the same rich, ruddy color, the same healthy sheen, and you work your way from shoulder to flank with the same patient care, pausing occasionally to clean the comb. The pile of dust on the straw is a little larger than it was for the grey mare, the chestnut's coarser coat holding more debris, and you make a note to sweep the aisle thoroughly when all the horses are done. The currycomb's teeth, now warm from the friction, glide easily through the hair, and you feel the subtle, pleasant ache in your forearm that comes from the sustained, repetitive motion, a gentle reminder of the work your body is doing. When the right side is finished, you clean the currycomb one final time and set it aside on the edge of the feeder where it will be within reach. The chestnut gelding stands with his coat, now fully curried, the dust removed and the rich, reddish-brown color glowing warmly in the lantern light. But the work is not yet complete. The soft brush must follow to sweep away the last particles and bring out the natural luster of his coat. You step out of the stall briefly to fetch the soft brush from the stone shelf, and as you do, you glance once more at the high window. The square of sky is definitely lighter now, a deep charcoal grey that has lost the last traces of indigo, and the outlines of the tree branches beyond the wall are just barely visible as faint, dark lines against the sky. The change is still subtle, still far from dawn, but it is undeniable, and you feel the quiet, wordless awareness of the night's slow passage settle into your mind like a stone dropping into still water. Then you turn back to the chestnut, the soft brush in your hand, and you slide open the stall door to continue the quiet work. The soft brush is in your hand, its bristles clean and cool from resting on the stone shelf, and you re-enter the chestnut gelding stall with the tool held lightly, the wooden handle fitting into your palm as if it belongs there. The chestnut stands exactly as you left him, his coat curried and dusted, the rich reddish-brown color already deeper than it was, and he turns his head just enough to regard you with one calm, dark eye. You take your position at his left shoulder, the same starting point you have used on every horse this morning, and you lay the soft brush against his coat, beginning the first long, sweeping stroke. The bristles make a sound that is different again from the bays and the greys, a soft, full whisper with a slightly grainy texture, the boar hair catching on the coarser coat fibers and releasing them with a gentle, rhythmic swish. The sound is steady and unhurried, blending with the lantern's hiss and the chestnut's deep, even breathing, and it fills the stall with a new layer of quiet noise. You work the brush in long flowing strokes that follow the direction of the hair, from the crest of the shoulder down toward the elbow, and the dust that rises is a fine reddish-brown haze that catches the lantern light and glows like a faint, warm mist. The particles are slightly larger than the grey mare's dust, and they swirl upward in small, lazy clouds before settling onto the straw or drifting out through the gaps in the partition. The chestnut's coat responds to the brushing with a slow, gradual transformation, the deep, ruddy color intensifying with each stroke until it seems to radiate a warmth of its own, a burnished, coppery sheen that reminds you of autumn leaves. You can see the individual hairs lying flat now, aligned and smooth, and the muscles beneath the coat stand out in subtle relief, the contours of shoulder and rib and flank all softly highlighted by the lantern's golden glow. The chestnut himself remains perfectly still, his weight balanced on all four legs, his head lowered just enough that his neck forms a gentle, relaxed curve. His ears droop sideways, the tips nearly touching the mane, and his lower lip hangs loose and slightly quivering, a sure sign of deep contentment. He sighs once, a long, slow exhalation that seems to come from somewhere deep in his barrel, and the warm breath flows across your arm in a gentle, rhythmic puff that smells of clean hay and warm horse. You pause the brush for just a moment, letting him enjoy the sensation, and you rest your free hand on his shoulder, feeling the solid, steady warmth of his body. The muscle beneath the coat is firm and unyielding, a testament to his strength, yet in this moment he is as soft and placid as a sleeping foal, and the contrast is a quiet thing of beauty that you note without words. After the pause, you continue the brushing, moving up the neck to the area just behind his ears, where the mane begins. The hair here is thick and dark, a deep brown that is almost black, and you brush carefully around it, using short, gentle strokes that flick away the last traces of dust without tangling the coarse strands. The chestnut leans just slightly into the pressure, a minute shift of his weight that brings his neck a fraction closer to your hand, and you accommodate the movement without thought, adjusting the angle of the brush. The sound of the bristles changes as you move onto the flatter expanse of his barrel, becoming a longer, smoother whisper that covers more area with each stroke. You clean the brush periodically, tapping it against the wooden partition, and the dust that falls is a warm, brownish powder that accumulates in a small pile on the straw, growing incrementally with each cleaning. You work along the left flank, down toward the hindquarters, and the brush strokes become broader, sweeping over the large, powerful muscles of the gluteal area with a rhythm that is almost like the stroke of a gentle wave. The chestnut's coat here is slightly thicker, a winter undercoat beginning to grow, and the soft brush catches the fine, downy fibers and smooths them into place. The horse's tail swishes once, a lazy pendulum motion that sends a faint breeze across your face, and you catch the clean, grassy scent of the straw that clings to the long hairs. You then step around to his right side, moving slowly and deliberately, and you begin the same process again, starting at the right shoulder with the first long sweeping stroke. The chestnut turns his head briefly to watch you, his dark eye calm and incurious, and then he faces forward, his breathing continuing its deep oceanic rhythm. On the right side, you notice a small patch of slightly rougher hair near the girth area, a place where the saddle pad rests during riding, and you spend a little extra time there, using shorter, more focused strokes to smooth the fibers and remove a tiny knot of tangled hair that has formed. The chestnut flinches slightly when the brush passes over the spot, a tiny, almost imperceptible tensing of the skin, and you lighten the pressure immediately, letting the bristles barely graze the surface until the tension subsides. The knot comes free with a few gentle passes, and the hair lays flat again, blending seamlessly with the surrounding coat. You continue along the barrel and flank, the brush strokes as steady and unhurried as ever, and the chestnut's breathing never changes, remaining deep and slow and utterly calm. When the right side is finished, you step back and lower the soft brush, taking a moment to survey the chestnut's coat. The transformation is complete. The rich, reddish-brown color glows warmly in the lantern light, a deep, burnished hue that seems to hold the flame within itself, and the hair lies smooth and flat from neck to tail, free of dust and tangles. The chestnut gelding looks solid and healthy and well cared for, his coat gleaming with a quiet, understated luster. You give him a gentle pat on the neck, your palm meeting the warm, smooth hair with a soft, flat sound, and he responds with a low, rumbling nicker, a sound so deep and quiet it feels like a vibration in the air. You slide his stall door closed with a gentle thud, leaving him to his rest, and you step out into the aisle, the soft brush still in your hand. You return the soft brush to the stone shelf, laying it beside the curry comb and the stiff brush, and you take a moment to wipe your hands on the folded cloth, removing the faint, greasy residue of horsehair and dust. The tools are all accounted for, and they rest in their neat row like soldiers at ease, each one having served its purpose. The lantern overhead continues to burn, its flame as steady as it has been since you first lit it, and the golden light falls on the aisle, illuminating the packed earth floor and the layer of straw that covers it. As you look down, you notice that the aisle, which was clean when you arrived, is now scattered with bits of straw, and small accumulations of dust that have drifted out from the stalls during the grooming. The straw lies in scattered, broken pieces, and the dust has settled in a fine, pale layer along the edges of the aisle, near the base of the partitions and around the stone shelf. It is not a large mess, but it is enough to need attention, and you decide that now is the time to sweep. You walk to the far end of the stable, near the water trough, where a broom made of bundled twigs leans against the wall. The broom is a simple tool, its handle a long, straight branch of cedar, its head a fan of stiff, dried twigs bound together with hemp cord. You lift it, feeling the familiar light weight, and you carry it back to the center of the aisle, where the straw and dust are thickest. You begin to sweep, drawing the twig broom in long, steady strokes across the packed earth, and the sound it makes is a dry, scratchy rustle that fills the aisle with its gentle, rhythmic voice. The twigs catch the loose straw and pull it into a growing pile, and the dust rises in a faint pale cloud that swirls in the lantern light before settling again. The motion of sweeping is different from the motion of brushing a horse. It is broader, more expansive, using your whole arm rather than just your wrist, and it has its own quiet, repetitive cadence. You sweep along the left side of the aisle first, drawing the broom from the base of the stall partitions outward, gathering the debris into a long, low ridge that runs down the center. The straw crackles softly as it moves, and the dust makes a faint, powdery hiss against the twigs. The horses, in their stalls, are undisturbed by the sweeping. They have heard this sound many times before, and it is as familiar to them as the currycomb's shush or the soft brush's whisper. The chestnut gelding turns his head to watch you through the gaps in his stall door, his dark eye following the broom's movement, and the bay gelding in the first stall shifts his weight and exhales a long, slow sigh. The grey mare remains still, her pale shape barely visible in the dimmer light of her stall, and the other horses further down the aisle continue their quiet, patient waiting. You work your way down the right side of the aisle, sweeping along the base of the opposite partitions, and the pile in the center grows larger, a long, low mound of straw, dust, and small bits of hay. The broom's twigs, stiff and resilient, catch the debris efficiently, and you pause once to shake out a piece of straw that has lodged between the branches, flicking it free with a quick, sharp motion. The sweeping takes time, but time is still a thing you have in abundance, and you let the task unfold at its own pace, the broom strokes as steady and unhurried as the brush strokes were. The lantern's hiss provides a constant, gentle undertone, and the stable's warm, hay-scented air wraps around you, unchanged and comforting. When the aisle is swept clean, you lean the broom against a pillar and fetch a flat wooden scoop from a hook near the stone shelf. The scoop is a simple rectangular tray with a short handle, its surface worn smooth by use, and you kneel down to gather the long pile of debris, sliding the scoop under the straw and dust and lifting it carefully. The debris is light and dry, and it makes a soft, rustling sound as it piles onto the scoop. You carry the first load to the far end of the stable, where a small side door leads to the compost heap outside, and you slide the door open just enough to slip through. The outside air hits your face with a cool, clean shock, a sharp contrast to the stable's warmth, and you feel it on your cheeks and the back of your hands as you walk the few steps to the compost pile. The pile is a low, dark mound at the edge of the forest, covered loosely with old straw, and you tip the scoop's contents onto it with a soft, dry clatter, watching the dust and straw settle into place before turning back to the stable. You make several trips, each one the same, kneeling to fill the scoop, walking to the side door, stepping into the cool night air, emptying the scoop onto the compost pile, and returning. The repetition is calming, a simple, purposeful rhythm that requires no thought, and you feel the night's coolness on your skin each time you step outside. A brief, refreshing sensation that wakes you slightly before the stable's warmth enfolds you again. The sky above the compost pile is still a deep charcoal grey, but the tree branches are now clearly visible against it, their bare, winter-bare limbs etched in fine dark lines, and the air carries a faint damp smell of fallen leaves and cold earth. You do not linger outside. You simply complete each trip and return to the stable, where the lantern's golden glow and the horse's steady breathing wait for you. When the last of the debris has been cleared, you return the scoop to its hook and take up the broom again, giving the aisle a final light sweep to catch any remaining dust. The floor is now clean, the packed earth smooth and even under its thin layer of fresh straw, and the stable feels tidier, more settled, as if the sweeping has put the morning's work in order. You lean the broom back against the wall near the water trough, and you turn your attention to the trough itself, which runs along the far wall, a long stone basin that holds the horse's drinking water. The water is still and dark in the lantern light, its surface reflecting the flame as a wavering golden line, and you can see a few bits of straw and dust that have floated onto the surface since you filled it last night. The water level is still high, but the horses have drunk from it during the night, and it is time to refresh it. You walk to the well, which stands just outside the stable's main door, a low stone ring with a wooden cover and a rope and pulley mechanism. The pulley creaks faintly as you lift the cover and lower the bucket, the rope running through your hands with a familiar, rough smoothness, and you hear the distant hollow splash as the bucket meets the water deep below. You draw it up again, hand over hand, the rope creaking in a slow, rhythmic cadence, and the bucket rises, brimming with cold, clear water that reflects the grey sky in a pale, shivering disk. You carry the bucket back inside, the rope handle creaking just as it did when you first arrived, and you pour the fresh water into the stone trough in the slow, steady stream. The sound of the water falling is a bright, liquid music, a splashing, gurgling note that fills the stable for a long moment and then fades into the quiet. The horses prick their ears at the sound, a few of them turning their heads toward the trough, and you know they will drink when they are ready, the fresh water, a small quiet gift you leave for them. You make one more trip to the well, drawing a second bucket of water and pouring it into the wooden bucket beside the stone shelf, replacing what you used for the cloth and the hoof cleaning. Then you return the well cover to its place and step back inside, closing the main door behind you with a soft wooden thud. The stable is now clean and fresh, the aisle swept, the water renewed, and the horses stand in their stalls, 3 of them fully groomed and 5 more waiting. The lantern burns on, its flame undiminished, and the high window shows a sky that is now a pale, muted grey. The first hint of dawn still some time away, but drawing closer with each slow, quiet minute. You stand in the center of the aisle, your hands resting at your sides, and you let the peace of the stable settle over you once more. A deep, abiding calm that has been earned through hours of steady, repetitive care. The stable is quiet now, the aisle swept clean, the water trough full, and the tools rest in their neat row on the stone shelf, each one bearing the faint, warm patina of use. You stand for a moment in the center of the aisle, your hands loose at your sides, and you let your gaze travel down the row of stalls. 3 horses have been groomed. The dark bay gelding in the first stall, his coat a deep, polished brown. The grey mare in the second, her dapples shimmering like light on water, and the chestnut gelding in the third, his ruddy coat glowing with a quiet, burnished warmth. 5 horses remain, their large shadowy shapes waiting in the stalls beyond, and you feel the quiet pull of the work still to be done, a gentle, unhurried obligation that does not weigh on you, but simply is. You pick up the currycomb from the stone shelf, its iron teeth cool again after resting, and you walk down the aisle to the 4th stall, where the next horse waits. This stall holds a light bay gelding, a horse with a coat the color of dried meadow grass, a soft, golden brown that seems to hold a memory of summer. He is slightly taller than the chestnut, with a leaner build and a long, elegant neck, and he stands with his head turned toward the stall door, his ears pricked forward in quiet curiosity. His eyes are large and dark and calm, and they follow you as you approach, reflecting the lantern flame in twin points of light. You place your hand on the stall door, feeling the cool, smooth wood, and you speak a low, quiet word before sliding the door open and stepping inside. The light bay greets you with a soft, fluttery exhale, his nostrils widening to take in your scent, and you place your palm flat on his shoulder, feeling the fine, warm coat and the steady beat of his pulse. He leans slightly into your touch, a gentle, welcoming pressure, and you stand with him for a while, letting the quiet greeting unfold. When you are ready, you begin the currycomb's work, starting at his left shoulder with the same slow, overlapping circles. The sound the comb makes against his coat is a soft, medium shush, not as deep as the chestnut's, nor as whispery as the grey mare's, and the dust that rises is a pale, golden-brown haze that catches the lantern light and swirls upward in lazy spirals. The light bay stands patiently, his breathing slow and even, his ears occasionally flicking back to listen to the sound of the comb. You work your way along his neck, his barrel, his flank, your hand moving in the practiced automatic rhythm that has become as natural as breathing, and the dust falls away in a fine pale cloud, revealing a coat that is clean and healthy and faintly glossy. You clean the currycomb periodically, tapping it against the partition, and the debris that falls onto the straw is light and dry, the color of pale sand. When the left side is done, you move around to the right and repeat the process. The same circles, the same pressure, the same unhurried pace. The light bay turns his head once to watch you, his dark eye calm and trusting, and then he faces forward again, his lower lip beginning to droop. The currycomb sound fills the stall, blending with the lantern's hiss and the horse's deep, steady breathing, and you feel yourself sinking once more into the quiet, timeless rhythm of the work. When the right side is finished, you clean the currycomb and set it aside, then fetch the soft brush from the stone shelf and return to the light bay's stall. The soft brush glides over his coat with a gentle silken whisper, sweeping away the last particles of dust and bringing out a soft golden sheen that seems to glow from within. You brush him thoroughly on both sides, the strokes long and flowing, and when you are done, you pat his neck and slide his stall door closed, leaving him clean and content. You move to the 5th stall, where a roan gelding waits, his coat a striking mixture of dark bay and white hairs that gives him a bluish, smoky appearance in the dim light. He is a solid, compact horse with a broad chest and strong legs, and he stands with his head slightly lowered, his ears relaxed sideways. You greet him with a hand on his shoulder, feeling the coarse, thick coat and the warmth beneath, and he responds with a low, rumbling nicker that vibrates through your palm. The currycomb's work on his coat produces a deeper, rougher shush, the iron teeth meeting the dense mixed hair with a pleasant, gritty resistance, and the dust that rises is a fine greyish cloud that drifts upward and settles on the straw. You work your way around him with the same patient, methodical care, cleaning the comb frequently, and the roan stands as still as a statue, his only movement the slow blink of his eyes and the steady rise and fall of his barrel. The soft brush follows, its bristles smoothing the coarse coat and revealing the supple, smoky beauty of the roan colouring, the white hairs catching the lantern light like tiny scattered stars. After the roan, you move to the 6th stall, where a second chestnut gelding waits, this one a lighter, more golden shade than the first chestnut, with a flaxen mane and tail that gleam pale in the lantern light. He is a younger horse, still growing into his frame, and there is a gentle, inquisitive quality to him, a softness in his eyes that you have always found endearing. He nickers as you enter his stall, a higher, brighter sound than the others, and he nudges your shoulder with his muzzle, his whiskers tickling through the fabric of your sleeve. You spend a moment stroking his forehead, feeling the fine, silky hair and the solid bone beneath, and then you begin the currycomb circles, the sound a light, crisp shush that matches his finer coat. The dust on him is minimal, a faint, golden haze, and the grooming proceeds smoothly and quickly, the soft brush leaving his coat with a pale, luminous glow that seems almost to shimmer. You pat his neck and leave him with a quiet sense of fondness, sliding his stall door closed with a gentle thud. The 7th stall holds a black gelding, a horse whose coat is the colour of deep shadow, so dark that it seems to absorb the lantern light rather than reflect it. He is a calm, dignified animal, older than the others, with a touch of grey beginning to show around his muzzle, and a depth of patience in his eyes that speaks of many years and many quiet mornings. His coat is thick and dense, already growing its winter depth, and the currycomb meets it with a soft, muffled shush that is almost a whisper. The dust that rises is a dark, fine powder, nearly invisible in the dim light, and you work the comb in slow, careful circles, taking your time around his older joints and the slight sway of his back. The black gelding stands with his eyes half closed, his breathing deep and slow, and he seems to sink into the grooming as if it were a familiar, cherished ritual. The soft brush follows, its bristles gliding over the dark coat and bringing out a subtle blue-black sheen, a quiet, understated luster that is beautiful in its simplicity. You spend a little extra time with him, running the soft cloth over his face and muzzle, wiping away the last traces of dust, and you feel a deep, quiet affection for this old, patient horse who has seen so many dawns. Now only one stall remains, the last one at the far end of the right row, where an older black horse with a grey-sprinkled muzzle waits. You have saved him for last, not by conscious design, but by the natural order of the stalls, and as you walk toward him, you feel the weight of the morning's work settling into your body, a pleasant, mild tiredness that is more satisfaction than fatigue. The tools in your hands are warm from use, the currycomb's teeth still carrying a faint residue of the black gelding's dark dust, and you pause at the stone shelf to clean them quickly, wiping the comb with the cloth and flicking the dust from the soft brush's bristles. Then you approach the final stall, where the old horse stands with his head turned toward you, his ears pricked forward, his dark eyes watching your approach with a calm, knowing patience. He is the oldest horse in the stable, a veteran of many seasons, and his coat, though still predominantly black, is flecked with grey around his muzzle, his eyes and along his flanks a soft silver dusting that speaks of his age. His back is slightly swayed, his legs a little stiffer than the younger horses, but there is a dignity to him, a quiet, steadfast presence that fills the stall with a sense of deep, abiding calm. You slide his stall door open and step inside, and the old horse greets you with a soft, low nicker, a sound that is more breath than voice, and he lowers his head to nuzzle your shoulder, his grey muzzle warm and soft against your sleeve. You stand with him for a long moment, your hand resting on his neck, feeling the slow, steady beat of his heart, and the gentle rise and fall of his breathing, and the quiet in the stall is so deep and so full that it seems to hold the entire stable within it. You begin the grooming with the currycomb, but you use it even more gently than you have with the others, the circles light and slow, barely pressing into the old horse's coat. His skin is thinner, more sensitive, and you take care to avoid any pressure that might cause discomfort. The dust that rises is a faint, greyish haze, and the currycomb's sound is a soft, whispery shush that barely disturbs the silence. The old horse stands perfectly still, his eyes half closed, his breathing deep and slow, and he seems to drift into a state of quiet meditation, his whole body relaxed and at ease. You work your way around him with the same patient, unhurried care, noting the small, familiar details of his body, the old scar on his left shoulder, the slight thickening of his right foreleg, the way his mane, now streaked with grey, falls in a thin, soft cascade along his neck. Each of these things you touch with a gentle, reverent hand, honouring the years they represent. When the currycomb's work is done, you set it aside and pick up the soft brush, but you do not use it immediately. Instead, you take the folded cotton cloth from the stone shelf, dip a corner into the small tin cup of water, and begin the final polish with a damp cloth instead. The old horse deserves a gentler finish, and you wipe his face first, the cloth gliding over his forehead, around his eyes, along his muzzle with a soft, moist sound, removing every last trace of dust. He closes his eyes fully as you work, his long lashes resting against the grey-flecked skin, and he exhales a long, slow sigh that seems to come from the very depths of his being. You wipe his neck, his shoulders, his back, the cloth moving in long, smooth strokes that leave the black coat with a soft, clean gleam, and the grey hairs on his muzzle and flanks seem to glow faintly in the lantern light, like threads of silver woven into dark fabric. As you work, a sound reaches your ears, a sound that is not part of the stable's familiar quiet. It is a single clear bird call, a tentative liquid note that rises from the trees beyond the stable wall, hangs in the air for a moment, and then fades. The old horse's ears prick forward, capturing the sound, and you pause in your work, the cloth resting against his flank, to listen. The bird call comes again, a little louder this time, a second note that is joined by a third, a small chorus of waking voices from the forest. You look up at the high window, and what you see makes you stop and straighten, the cloth still in your hand. The square of sky, which had been a deep charcoal grey, has shifted again, and now it is a muted, soft grey blue, the colour of a still lake just before sunrise. The tree branches beyond the window are clearly visible, their bare winter limbs etched in fine dark lines against the pale sky, and the world outside is no longer the deep silent night, but the hushed expectant stillness of early dawn. You stand for a moment, watching the sky through the high window, and you feel the change in the air as well, a subtle freshening, a cool, clean breath that seeps through the gaps in the stable walls and carries the faint, damp scent of morning. The lantern, which has burned so steadily all through the dark hours, now seems a little less bright, its golden glow paling slightly against the growing light from outside. The horses, too, seem to sense the coming dawn. The bay gelding shifts in his stall, the grey mare stamps a hoof softly, and the chestnut gelding exhales a long, waking breath. The stable is stirring not with restlessness, but with a quiet collective awareness that the night is ending and the day is near. You turn back to the old black horse, who stands with his head still lowered, his eyes still half closed, and you finish the final polish with the damp cloth, wiping along his back and hind quarters with slow, gentle strokes. The cloth glides over his coat, leaving a soft, clean sheen, and when you are done, you fold it and set it aside. You place your hand on the old horse's neck, feeling the warmth and the slow, steady pulse, and you stand with him in the growing light. The bird calls outside, now a soft, continuous chorus that fills the air with gentle music. The old horse opens his eyes fully and looks at you, his gaze calm and ancient and full of a quiet wisdom that needs no words, and you feel a deep, wordless gratitude for these hours in the stable, for the horses, for the slow, repetitive work that has filled the darkness with peace. You slide the stall door open and step out into the aisle, leaving the old horse to his rest, and you walk to the lantern, which still burns on its hook overhead. You reach up and take the wire handle, lifting the lantern carefully, and you bring it close to your face. The flame is still a steady golden teardrop, but it is no longer needed. The light from the high window is now strong enough to see by, a soft grey-blue illumination that fills the stable with a cool, muted glow. You turn the small brass knob that controls the wick, and the flame shrinks, flickers, and then goes out with a faint, final wisp of smoke that curls upward and vanishes. The glass chimney is warm in your hand, and you set the lantern down on the stone shelf where it will cool and wait for the next night. The stable is now fully visible in the early dawn light, its details sharp and clear, the crossbeams overhead, the grain of the wooden partitions, the clean-swept earth floor, the horses standing in their stalls with their coats gleaming and their eyes calm. The bird calls outside have grown into a steady, gentle chorus, and through the high window you can see the sky turning from grey-blue to a pale, soft pink at the horizon, the first hint of the sun's approach. You take one last walk down the aisle, your sandals making their soft, familiar scuff against the packed earth, and you check each horse in turn, the dark bay, the grey mare, the chestnut, the light bay, the roan, the younger chestnut, the black gelding, and the old black horse with the grey muzzle. They are all clean and content, their coats brushed, their hooves picked, their water fresh, and they stand in the quiet dawn, like 8 patient, noble statues waiting for the day to begin. You return the tools to the wooden chest, the curry comb and the stiff brush, and the soft brush and the folded cloth, closing the lid with a soft wooden thud that echoes faintly in the quiet. The water bucket you leave beside the stone shelf, empty now, ready to be filled again when the sun is higher. You slide open the main stable door, stepping outside into the cool, fresh morning air, and you feel it on your face and your hands, a clean, cold caress that wakes you fully for the first time in hours. The sky above is a pale, washed blue, streaked with soft bands of pink and gold at the horizon, and the stars are gone, faded into the growing light. The trees at the edge of the forest are dark silhouettes against the brightening sky, and the bird calls are now a full, joyful chorus that fills the air with a gentle, liquid music. You stand in the doorway of the stable, looking out at the world as it slowly wakes, and you feel the quiet, steady rhythm of the morning settling into your bones, a deep, calm peace that will carry you through the rest of the day.